have a very full calendar this evening, so we're going to start on time, and we're going to ask you all, particularly those of you who have appeared before. 3 of the 4 matters on tonight have been before us before, and we look forward to any comments you may have. And if anyone wants to make a comment, if they would fill out a card on the back of the seats and hand it over there, we will be happy to hear from you. We'll be happy to hear from you anyway, but that helps us a lot. Some of you have heard this before, but I will say it again. We are the Planning Commission. I'm Tom O'Donnell, and I'm the chair. The reason I say we're the Planning Commission, sometimes people confuse us with that more august and powerful body, which are your elected officials, the town council. We don't make the laws. We rarely get to make anything like that, with rare exception. So basically, we take the laws that they give us, and we try to apply them to your facts. So that's what we can do, and sometimes when people want us to do something else, I just try to point that out to them that we can't do it. As you probably know, an applicant is normally given up to 5 minutes. No one is required to speak their full limit. The people who want to speak after the applicant can speak up normally, unless there's a huge crowd. Normally they can speak up to 3 minutes, and then the applicant has the final word, which is the way the system works, and they get 3 more minutes. We then close the public hearing, and we then have no more comments from the public. It's discussed up here, and hopefully a motion is made, and eventually a motion is often passed. So that's what we'll be doing this evening. Any of you have cell phones, I'd appreciate it if you'd put them on a silent action as opposed to ring. So I think that's all of the preliminaries. I will now ask someone to take the roll.
Okay. Commissioner Erickson?
Here.
Commissioner Jensen? Commissioner Sayok?
Here.
Commissioner Machichi? Commissioner Talasfor?
Here.
Commissioner Bourgeois?
Here.
And Chair O'Donnell.
Here. Let me say about the roll call, because it reminds me, you'll notice we are missing 2 commissioners tonight who have been excused. One of our commissioners is ill. I believe it will be a brief illness, but nevertheless, she is fairly ill. Which means, of course, we have 5 commissioners, but one of our commissioners is pretty new. Charles Erickson is here. He will not vote this evening on the first 3 matters. I call that to your attention because that means that we will have 4 voting commissioners on those first 3 matters. And it takes 4 votes, I believe, to pass, although 3 out of 4 would be a majority of that. Maybe we'll have to ask the council, but normally it would take 4 votes to prevail. I don't know if Ori is here this evening. That seems to me to be
I'm not sure if the attorney's available either.
okay. Well, normally, and if any of my fellow commissioners have a different view on this, I sure would appreciate hearing from it. Normally, it takes 4 votes to prevail, and I point that out to you only because normally, if there are 7 of us, getting 4 votes is not as hard as getting 100%. So, do any commissioners believe that 3 out of 4 works? Okay. Well, then, if I'm wrong, I will stand ready to be corrected by anyone who can do that. But that's the way we're going to operate unless otherwise corrected. So I point that out to you, too, because if any of you who are appearing before us are concerned about that, please let us know, and perhaps the sooner you let us know, the better. This is not something we had planned on. All right, now if you will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next matter we have is the approval of the minutes of February 11th. Is there a motion? There is a motion. Commissioner Talasfor.
Yes, I move to approve the minutes for Wednesday, February 11th.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Are there any written communications?
No, they're not.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. You do have one desk item on Crefeld Heights.
All right.
Item 4.
Thank you. We have no requested continuances this evening. Do we have any subcommittee reports? John Bourgeois?
I have 2. This evening, prior to this meeting, the General Plan Committee met, and we discussed, we're working on updating the housing element for the general plan, and our consultants came in and gave us a presentation on the technical appendix to the housing element. And so we reviewed that and provided feedback and got an update on that process. In addition to that meeting, there was a General Plan Advisory Committee, which is the larger group that is working on the rest of the elements of the General Plan update. There was a meeting of that committee on Thursday, February 19th. We got a presentation from the town manager on the fiscal status of the town and how that relates to the general plan elements. We also reviewed the Los Gatos Boulevard plan and the recent direction given by council, and we reviewed major development projects that are coming forth.
Any other committee reports? I just wanted to share with you that I did receive a help and a correction. Our town attorney, Ori Korb, has advised me that 3 votes out of the 4 will be sufficient, so we will not need 100%. Thank you. All right, the next matter we have on our agenda would be verbal communications from the audience, and that is one can speak up to 3 minutes on matters that are not before us this evening, and you should understand if you do that, we cannot respond to that or take any action about it. We would just be happy to listen to you. Citizen Ray, did you want to speak?
Oh, good. It's on tonight. Wonderful. I did have a comment, though, for the person taking the minutes. I would think you'd want to sign the minutes, so if we have a problem, we know who to speak with, you know? You didn't have any signature on the minutes tonight, so I ask you to think about that. First off, wonderful news about this monstrosity, okay? The Meadows. We got feedback from the group that represents the Meadows that they are dropping plans to do this kind of an ugliness. You want to see something ugly? Take a look at that. 6 stories high plus the roof. That's about 75 feet or so. Can you believe it? How many inmates would this thing need? It's an institution. On its face, how would you like to live there in your senior years? How would you? Well, anyway, the town council took care of them very nicely, and they appear to be gone, at least for the moment. But one thing to keep in mind, this building was planned and situated to run at right angles to the contours of the hill, the mountain. Unbelievable. Right angles down slope. That's so ugly it's not to be believed. How could anybody in their right mind who cares about natural beauty of the community propose such a ugly situation? So feel good. Good things have happened at the town council level. Also, property rights. Property rights, the issue of property rights in the planning department came up again, okay, and in the planning process. None other than the city manager at the General Plan Advisory Committee. He spoke favorably and knowledgeably, so to speak, of property rights and what their position is in local government. So I've got to repeat again, particularly from Mr. Larson's point of view, that there's no such thing as property rights other than in a figment of the imagination of the local realtors, Chamber of Commerce, et cetera, okay? A land use applicant has to appear before the Planning Commission and the Town Council, and they, under California land use law, they have a 100% burden to prove, substantiate, whatever they propose for the community is in harmony and in consistency with whatever public document is being spoken to. General plan, hillside specific plan, zoning ordinance, etc. And the only thing that they can expect is if they are successful in arguing their point before the public body, the deciding body, they may or may not receive a privilege to do exactly what they want to do. If the public body decides, you, the Planning Commission, and so forth, then they can go ahead because they've been extended a privilege. And that privilege, on a discretionary judgment by the body, may not be extended. And there are no further rights other than an appeal to the Town Council or maybe go to court.
Thank you, Citizen Ray.
Yes, indeed. Happy to be of service to the community.
All right, the next matter we have before us will be the first item of public hearings on the agenda, and this is a continued matter concerning 520 Santa Rosa Drive, architectural site approval, and compliance with CEQA recommended a mitigated negative declaration. May I have a staff report?
This property is located on the east side of Santa Rosa Drive, just north of Colorado Court. It is a 3-acre site. However, the majority of it has slopes that are in excess of 30%. And for the commissioners that have been out there, you'll see that there's a relatively flat portion right at the top near the street. When you put the 30-foot front setback in there and then you draw an imaginary line where the slope goes beyond 30%, we have a fairly narrow area where we can put this house. The house is clearly sited in the most appropriate location on the site, and we did not encourage the applicant to step it further down the hill because that would be getting onto very steep slopes. It also would likely present a house that had a 3-story elevation because it'd be pretty tough to step down a slope that steep and not have cascading levels down the hill. So we did ask them, and this was also directed by the Planning Commission when the original application was reviewed that was denied, that they not go beyond that 490 contour. The 30% slope is actually a little bit higher than that. It sort of varies if you look at the topography, but it's up higher than 490. There's a darker line shown on your site plan that shows where that 30% line begins. So we tried to keep all of the development, inclusive of decks, behind that line. This application was considered by the Planning Commission in August, on August 11th. It was continued for redesign. There have been several subsequent continuances. We didn't have any discussion at any of those meetings. Those continuances were requested on the part of the applicant because they were still working on their plans and working through issues and just didn't have their plans ready to go forward until this evening. They have met with neighbors. They had a meeting over the weekend. I don't have any information on how that meeting went. I'll let the applicant cover that when they do their presentation. The concerns that came up at the August meeting were bulk and mass, height, visual impact, and we also heard from one neighbor that had some privacy concerns. The Chitris, who are the neighbors that live to the right at 510 Santa Rosa, did send me an email correspondence that they were unable to be here this evening. They're the ones that had the privacy concern. Their major issue seems to be that they want to maintain some view of the hills beyond, and they felt that the house was close enough to them that it was blocking the bulk of their view towards Mount Hamilton. The applicant has modified the plan since you last saw them. The primary thing that they did was they lowered the house 4 feet through doing further excavation and pushing it down into the site. They've also added stone to soften the house and break up the massing. They modified the master bedroom on the south side, trying to address the privacy issue of the adjacent neighbor. They have added to the landscaping at the rear to provide better screening for the neighbors that live below the site. And there's going to be a landscape berm in front of the house alongside the large oak tree that's there, which will help screen that from the street. This application must be acted on this evening because we have a permit streamlining criteria that says we have to act on it by March 9th. So this is the last night to take action, whether it be approval or denial. We do need a final action on the application. Staff did include a condition or a suggestion in the staff report that should the commission see fit to approve this application, that we thought the second story could be reduced further to try and open up a better view quarter on the right side of the house. The view issue has come up from a number of neighbors. The ones across the street were particularly concerned about not being able to see anything beyond the site. And on the left side of the property, because there's a driveway and the garage is single story, there is some open area on the left side of the house. The right side has about a 30-foot setback between the second story and the property line, so there is some quarter there, but if they pulled the second floor back in a little further, I think it would pull it further from the neighbor that has the privacy issue and would open up more of a view through on that right side of the house. I don't have a suggested amount that can be taken off, but we just felt if the house was reduced on the second floor, they have the ability to put some of that in the cellar and not lose floor area, bring some of that massing in on the sides, and open up some quarters through the two sides of the house. That concludes the staff report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners, do you have any questions of staff? Commissioner Bourgeois?
Thank you. I was just curious. So they've lowered the grade 4.5 feet, and so the main ridge line of the home comes down 4.5 feet.
About 4 feet, yes.
About 4 feet.
Yeah, it may be 4.5 in some parts.
But the difference in the maximum height from the highest to the lowest point was only 2 feet. That was confusing to me. They went from 31 feet to 28.8, so it's 2 feet 4 inches. Anyway,
The low to high is, that's from your absolute low to your absolute high, so that's not a straight sectional height. I'll let the architect try to explain why that is only a couple feet different, because they did push the whole thing down.
Right. And the main ridge line dropped down, the absolute elevation of that ridge line is down 4.5,
right.
Somewhere in there.
Correct.
Commissioner Siak?
Ms. Davis, it follows along Commissioner Bourgeois' question. Can you clarify to me the maximum height of a structure on this particular ridgeline? Is it 25 feet?
It is 25 feet. That is based on the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines. The town code allows 30 feet in the HR zone, but the Hillside Standards has a more conservative recommendation as a standard of 25 feet, and we've held all hillside homes to that since adoption of the standards in 2004. There is also a low to high maximum of 35, and that's for when they have stepping elements. But any section can't be higher than 25 feet. And so that's what we're striving to meet with the 25-foot height. You do have a provision in the Hillside Standards that says a house on a ridge line can be held to 18 feet. This is not identified as a significant ridge line by the Hillside Standards, but the Commission has the discretion to make that determination that if you felt this house was visible enough, if you felt it was enough of a visual impact, you could ask them to do an 18-foot height. And I did hear that from a couple of commissioners at the previous meeting, but we didn't hear consensus on that. And so we suggested the house be lowered, but we didn't give the applicant a certain number of feet that they had to try and accomplish.
And just a second clarification. So with the current proposal, it does not exceed at least the 25 feet, huh?
Correct. It does not exceed 25.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Telesfor?
I have a question. It's on elevation A 0.8, but I don't know if it should be for you or I should ask the applicant.
Well, try me and I'll see if I can answer it for you.
Okay. And what I'm looking at, I think it's the rear of the home, the enlarged north exterior elevation, number 2.
Yes, that's the rear.
So it shows landscaping here in the back. It says proposed landscape for screening of the rear north exterior elevation of the home from the valley floor. My question is, I see steps going, you know, down from, is that a, what I want to know is this part of the rear
That's the
deck?
cellar element, that's
Inside, not
that's
visible.
below grade.
Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I will invite the applicant to speak, and since I don't know who's going to speak for the applicant, I will assume I have your card here? Yes. All right. Please give us your thoughts.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Lily Atessa Matthews. I'm a California registered architect and a LEED accredited professional. I'm the daughter of Iraj Atessam, the principal architect of Atessam Associates, who is the architect of record for 520 Santa Rosa Drive. I stand before you this evening on his behalf as he's away on business travel. The owners have worked very closely with the design team to secure all the requirements as set forth by the Town of Los Gatos Hillside Rules and Regulations, which have been updated various times in the past 5 years of our design revisions. According to your staff report, our project has met all the legal requirements with a few conditions which will be secured prior to the building permit. In consultation with our immediate neighbors, we have submitted our drawings to Alta Vista Homeowner Associations. You have the letter of approval in front of you and a few items of note as follow. The building width is less than the allowable square feet, leaving more open view corridors, and the setbacks are more than the minimum required. The house was lowered 4 feet, although it was not a legal requirement. The master bathroom window was redesigned for more privacy away from the adjacent neighbor. The landscaping on the street side includes a natural berm and a large oak tree, which helps to screen the house and reduce its mass. The second floor plan is recessed from all sides in relation to the ground floor, especially on the east side, to allow ample view of the neighbor across the street. I have a color rendering over there that actually shows it a lot nicer than the black and white. It's next to Suzanne, if you want to pass it around. It shows how we've worked very hard to soften it up. Also, in consultation with our neighbors downhill, we have submitted our drawings to Greenbrier Homeowner Association. A few items of note as follow. Additional landscaping at the rear with native plants to secure the uphill view. A landscape architect will be on board and will work diligently with Greenbrier homeowners to select and finalize the foliage. Uphill view will be screened by landscaping with evergreens. The house will blend beautifully into the natural hillside. As California registered and committed architects, the design team welcomes and respects the neighborhood environment. But we also must consider and be sympathetic to the needs and the rights of our clients. The clients continue to pay land fees and taxes on a legally owned, legally zoned property without the benefits of actually living there. It is their right to build and live on this property, and we kindly request your approval for what is just, legal, and fair. This project has been carefully designed by the architects, redesigned with the comments of the Town of Los Gatos consulting architect, redesigned again with planning department comments, and finally redesigned again with neighbors' concerns. The unnecessary design revisions to solely accommodate neighbors' preferences for views are not fair to the owners and have placed undue hardship and financial burden to Mr. and Mrs. Saberi for no reason but neighbors' emotional pleas that have no legal foundation. You have the plans, your staff report, and the facts that are legal and truthful. We must be in line to build a legal home, and we kindly request that you approve the project to allow us this opportunity to give the clients a home. This lot is zoned for residential. It's not zoned for a park for neighbors' enjoyment of views. The neighbors need to understand the legality and the fairness of the zoning laws and height limitations and respect the design team for their efforts, not oppose us because they feel it's too massive or obstructs views when it does not. The residence is smaller than the allowable mass. It is a proper design that needs the proper approval from you, the commissioners, to move forward tonight. The owners and the consultant team have read the staff report and concur with a full understanding that the conditions set forth for approval will be met in due time as set forth in the staff report. Tonight we have Mr. and Mrs. Saberi sitting right here, along with the design team, strongly requesting that you approve the project to move forward in the design process so that our clients can move one step closer to building their dream home. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of the speaker? Commissioner Bourgeois?
Thank you for your presentation. I was just wondering if you heard my question earlier about the difference between the sinking at 4 feet, but there's only a change in the 2 feet from the highest to lowest point. Maybe show me on the plans like where that is.
So I could also show you afterwards too, but basically what she was saying, the sectional cut, we have cut it 4 feet, so it's been lowered 4 feet, but then at some points we've raised the roof a little higher, and that's where you get the 2.5 versus the 4 feet.
Can you tell me a plan sheet number and like what section to look at? I mean,
Do you know? Oh, no, here. Yeah, I'm not really certain of all the technical issues, and I can always get back to you, maybe
or perhaps during your rebuttal period you could,
figure it out.
because you'll have a chance to come back.
Ms. Matthews? A suggestion was made that might be helpful to you. When you're through here, you'll have another opportunity to speak again, and if you'd like to, you could look through the plans
Yeah.
while you're waiting to speak.
Maybe I'll speak
But
with
it's
you now.
important that you respond if you can now, because responding after we vote may not be helpful.
Yes.
And that's sheet number what?
In A0.9?
If you take the microphone and hold it in your hands, we can hear you.
A0.9?
Okay.
I believe we were talking about the elevation from here to here. Is that what you were telling me, Suzanne? I think that's the one that's 20, on one side we have 28.8, and then on the other side we have 25, and we dropped it overall 4 feet. So we did go at the highest point, we are 2.5 lower, not 4. But at most of it, we've dropped as you can see, it has a second roof line. So those are dropped 4 feet. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, Suzanne?
So when measured from the front of the property, it's 25 feet height, and when measured from the back of the property, it's 28. And
Yeah,
because of the
like you
slope
said.
difference, because of the position of the house and the slope difference,
Right.
slope on the back, that's why there's that
Exactly.
2 foot difference.
Exactly.
Are there other questions? I think Commissioner Telesfor, did you want to ask a question?
Thank you. Thank you. Were you at the, Ms. Davis told us that a meeting was held this weekend with neighbors?
Yes.
Okay. Were you at that meeting?
Yes, I was,
Okay, and
with the owners.
Can you let us know what
Yes.
was discussed and?
Yes. Prior to that, I had a lot of back and forth emails with the neighbors, and we only had Diane Pascuzzi from Alta Vista, who actually wrote the letter for you in your packet, that attended representing the neighbors. And she felt very comfortable with our design. She's just reiterated that once we get approval, we work closely with them to pick out the materials for the exterior. She has this, they have a 30% reflectivity, they have their own rules there, so we need to just go by those, and we have those, and the owners promised that we would abide, and we're actually going to go to their March 3rd meeting, and we're going to find out when Greenbrier meets and go to their meeting as well.
You said to the Alta Vista homeowners meeting?
We're going to go to the Alta Vista homeowners meeting on the 3rd. We
Okay,
haven't
so
gone to one
the meeting you're
before.
talking about now is the one,
It's the one on the 22nd we had on Sunday at the job site.
and that is with the, right, Alta Vista, but what about the Shannon Valley Road, that's on the, did you meet with those
We
homeowners?
did not meet with them. They, we had contacted them for the meeting time, and they did not come.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions of the speaker?
Maybe just one more, if I could. And it's, there's a suggestion in here in the staff report on page 5. I don't know if you are
I
familiar
have
with
it,
that.
I don't have it with me, but I've read it.
Okay. And the staff has made a suggestion to you or for your design, and can you respond to that?
What is the suggestion? I don't have it with me.
It reads, you're suggesting that by reducing the second story, some views of the hillsides can be retained, eliminating the second floor would preserve a greater view and would lower the main roof ridge?
Yes.
The cellar of the house could be increased in size if the second floor is reduced or eliminated.
Right, that's what Suzanne was mentioning earlier as well. Yes, we're well aware of that, and we're very comfortable meeting that condition. My father's actually going to be here next week, and we're going to sit down and go through all those conditions. That's why we said if you could get approval with the conditions, then we're going to meet those conditions right away.
Okay, thank you.
In redesign.
Commissioner Bourgeois?
If I could follow up on that, because I want to make sure you're clear that you understand what it says. It says that the second floor could be reduced or eliminated, and you're fine with either alternative?
We're going to look to reduce it, and then to take more room in the cellar area.
Okay, but you would not be open to an elimination of the second story, but you would be open to a reduction. I just want to
That's
be
what
clear on
we're
that
focusing
point.
on, the reduction.
Okay.
Because the elimination would lose so much square footage. Of course, we're going to have to consult with the owners.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me also say, when you say consult with the owners, this evening we will vote on this. And
Yes.
if you tell us something, we're going to assume that you're speaking for the owners.
Yes.
And it will be critical if we ask you something like that you tell us yes or no, because otherwise you'll be very surprised if we impose it. So,
Okay.
no other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we'll hear from people who have submitted cards. I have a Selphia Hallam. If you would just state your full name and your address, please.
Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Sylvia Halim, 511 Santa Rosa Drive. In our neighborhood, we have homeowner association, and based on our CCNR, for any architecture change, whether remodeling or new construction, plans need to be submitted to the Architecture Control Committee prior to the submission to Los Gatos Planning Commission, so that the surrounding neighbors can give inputs. We do this through meetings, and usually it is an iterative process. In this particular case, the plan was submitted for the first time to us a few weeks ago, and there was only one meeting 3 days ago, and so there was no time for an iterative process. And it was raining also on that day. That's why we thought it was canceled, so we didn't come. So my property happens to be neighboring with two plans of new constructions. One is this current property we are discussing, and the other one is on Colorado Court. The one on Colorado Court listened to their neighbors, made several attempts, even did a total redesign, and most importantly, made the best effort to keep the structure low and conform to the slope. And basically, I think it's a good example to follow. Listen to neighbors and keep the structure low and conform to the slope. Thank you for listening.
Excuse me, we always see if there are any questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Are there any questions of the speaker? Thank you very much. The next speaker we have is Ronald Casper. Mr. Casper, again, if you would state your address, we're trying to take these things down as we go.
I'm Ron Casper. I'm at 531 Santa Rosa Drive in Los Gatos. And a couple comments. We as the neighbors were never involved in any of the design process with this house. We were only given the plans after the fact and basically asked to show up on the property to look at the plans. Well, we've already seen the plans. We had no input to make any decisions or changes. And based on what I've seen, the house has basically been lowered approximately 2 feet. I took some photographs again today. All of the poles are basically blown over. But if you took that design of what she did on the house and you stood on the opposite end of the property and looked that way, the house would overwhelm the ridgeline. It is a huge, massive house that does not fit the property very well. We have told and recommended that they cut the house down to 1 story. do very similar to what Alex and Susie have done next door. It's a one-story from the street, two-story from the rear, but none of our suggestions have had any input. And if you look at Diane's comments back to the town, she basically says that, you know, the homeowners approved it, but here is the whole list of things that were still of our concerns about the house. And they're all listed in this particular letter to the town. And, you know, it goes back to the height, the size of the house on the lot. So I don't think any of these issues have been addressed from the last meeting we had until this particular meeting. So.
Are there questions of the speaker? Commissioner Telesfor?
You're with which homeowner association?
The Homeowners Association is led up by
No.
Miss Diane Pascuzzi, and she did write a letter to the town.
Yeah, is that Alta Vista?
That's Alta
That's what
Vista,
I wanted
right,
to know.
right.
Thank you.
Right.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The next speaker card I have is Alex Lupp, L-E-U-P-P. I mispronounced it. I'm sorry. Your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Alex Loip, and I'm at 530 Santa Rosa Drive. So when you're up at Santa Rosa and you look at 520, I'm the house right to the left, adjacent to the left side. And at the last meeting concerning this project, I think the commissioners highly recommended that the design ought to be reduced from 3 levels to 2, that the roof line should come down closer to 18 feet because of the ridge line concerns, and that the neighbors should be involved in the redesign process. Unfortunately, none of those items were included in the redesign. Now, I think a couple of you commissioners were up there at the site, and I don't remember exactly which ones, and you mentioned that you looked at the house on the left side, which is my house, and you said it fits very nicely into the hillside. There's no concern from the ridgeline point of view, but it's a one-story house. Well, it's not. It's a 2-story house. It's close to 5,000 square feet plus a 4-car garage. But the first level is built into the hillside, and the hillside has the same slope as the slope on 520. And we also cropped the roof line to make it flat on top, so when you look from the street, the actual height of the roof is below 18 feet. The entrance to the house and to the garage is below street level. And in my mind, there is no reason we could use a similar approach on 520. They can accommodate all the square footage they need on 2 levels, 6,000 plus. And it would fit very nicely into the hillside, no concerns from the ridge line. And I would be happy to show them the plans and on how it can be done. It is a different design approach than what this one is, which has never changed over the last 5 or 6 years. But I would really support a design like that. I don't want an empty lot next door. I'd love to have somebody build. And I'm sure that all the neighborhood would be in full support if the project would be designed like that. The way it is right now, it's a massive 3-level structure that doesn't fit on that lot. It doesn't fit in the neighborhood.
Questions of the speaker? Perhaps we should at this point indicate how many people have gone out and seen this site. Those of us who have, so the whole commission has been out to this.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gary Johnson?
Yes, time for number 3.
Okay, thank you. Mike Meyer.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, my name is Mike Meyer. I am a principal in Greenbrier Homes that build Shannon Valley Ranch. I also intend to live at 297 Mountain Laurel. I am not a member of the Homeowners Association of Shannon Valley, the Shannon Valley Homeowners Association. There is no Greenbrier Homeowners Association. I'm opposed, and my company is opposed, to the development because the 31 feet monster house we had before from the rear, from our point of view, looking up, has been reduced by 2 feet 4 inches. It's not enough. It's still a monster house to us. We agree with the other neighbors, would like to bring the house down in size. We have 3 suggestions. First, please, I ask the applicants to meet with the Shannon Valley Homeowners Association and work out something. Just talk to them. Evidently, they called the Homeowners Association or emailed them a few days ago, and they just said they can't get the residents together and have a meeting so abruptly, and they just couldn't do it. The second suggestion I have is that we want way better landscaping from the rear of the home. In other words, when we look all down Santa Rosa from below, there's a level of greenery from all of the homes, but it doesn't work here. For example, if you look at A08, you see these 5 large trees in the lower design. And I guess they're supposed to be oak trees, but if you look at A11, or A1.1, and you look to find those trees, they're called Quercus agrifolia, which is live oak trees. And they say 24-gallon trees. I can assure you that I've installed thousands of trees. I've never seen a 24-inch or 24-gallon live oak tree. They're 24-inch boxes or 36-inch boxes or 48-inch boxes. They are not this little tree. If you put a tree like that on the site, it'd be a twig. It would be not remotely close to the design shown in this plan. The third comment I'd make is about the what you call the Hillside Development Standards and Guidelines. At our last meeting, when we talked, I guess, on August 11th, I made the point that the Standards and Guidelines recognizes that ridges between Shannon Road and Blossom Hill are what is known as a significant ridgeline area. In that area, visual impacts of buildings pursuant to the Standards and Guidelines should be mitigated to the greatest reasonable extent by reducing the height.
Go ahead and finish your thought.
By reducing the height of the buildings. If the buildings cannot be sited, then they should be redesigned to go to 18 feet. In this case, there's a bunch of guidelines written.
I'm going to cut you off here because you've had your time. I think you finished your thought, and I think we understand it. Are there questions, however, of the speaker? Thank you very much. Now, I don't have any more cards except the applicant will be able to speak. So if I miss somebody, now is the time to tell me. All right, Citizen Ray. I didn't miss your card, Citizen Ray. You didn't submit it.
Thank you. You know, I got my cap on, you know.
Good thing.
You know, I've been doing this kind of work off and on for 40 years, the last 10 years in Los Gatos. And I'm telling you, I can't believe it. You're giving them every chance in the world to go back and redesign it so it's compatible with the neighborhood, compatible with the public documents, compatible with Hillside Design Guidelines, compatible with the Hillside Specific Plan, compatible with the infill policy. Have they listened to you? Not one iota. Who should I point my finger at? You know, I'm looking at this house. It's a rectangular box, a flatland-style house. It's unbelievable that anybody in their right mind who has any concern for the natural beauty of the community, the ridges, the mountains, the hilltops, it's inconceivable that anybody in their right mind would propose such a monster. It is a monster. Woo! Mech monster, okay? Because we get it time and time and time again. Nobody wants to look at the design requirements of the town of Los Gatos. Nobody, except the people who are understand what natural beauty is all about, and there are many of those, okay? Also, I want to point out to you that the staff's recommendation, Ms. Davis here, excuse me. Ms. Davis here has recommendation on the front page, conditional approval or denial. Let me go to the last page, recommendation. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission take the following actions. Pass everything. Pass it all. That's a perfect example of the dishonesty and deceit of Lortz's program and the people that work for him. Front page, they say one thing, on the back page, they contradict it totally. It's so ugly, it's not to be believed. Are they on the take? Are they on the take? I keep asking that question. Why would anybody in their right mind perform like that? Okay? Lastly, neighborhood compatibility. This ugliness would be a total detriment to San Carlos Drive, okay, to the drive up there. It's beautiful. With my naturalist soul, I drive up and down the existing neighborhood, the street, and I feel good about everything, practically everything that's gone in there. Split levels, single stories, everything,
Thank you,
steps.
Mr. Ray.
It's beautiful.
Thank
This
you.
is an abomination.
That's it. Thank you. Any questions of the speaker?
I don't want to overdo it.
That's hard to believe. Any questions of the speaker? Thank you very much. May I hear from Citizen Ray? If you'd move, she could get up. May I hear from the applicant?
Okay, a few of the comments that I wanted to speak. We did send drawings earlier to, is this on? To Alta Vista, to Mr. Anthony Larman back in June. And he said that he had gotten that all out to the neighbors. So that was a few months ago, not a few days ago. We did send it to Alta Vista a few days ago only because I just got their contact information from Suzanne. So we were addressing Alta Vista more, and we were contacting them. I was on a phone contact with Mr. Larman every week, and he was assuring me that he was meeting with the neighbors and he was getting his comments back to me. And this started back in June, and I have correspondences with him from that date, all the emails. The neighbor that's to our immediate left, that said they do have a beautiful house that blends very well with the hillside that's in the home. Their house is actually, the grading is lower. It dips down. We're a little higher. So we cannot exactly do the same design process as they've done. We have reduced it as much as possible to still give the clients some square footage of livable space. We don't feel that it's a monster. Another comment that I wanted to make is the landscaping. We do not have a landscape design. We did not hire a landscape architect. These trees were just thrown there preliminary from the civil architect. We are going to bring a landscape architect on board to meet with the homeowners to pick trees that are bigger than the 24-inch box. And like I said, they're going to be the deciduous bigger trees that will shield the house from the public path down below and from the houses in Shannon Valley. So that will be brought forth during the building permit. And we will get full landscaping and be in contact with the neighbors to see what we could do to screen it as much as possible. I think those were the only comments I had. Did you have anything else?
Are there questions of the speaker? No questions? I guess I have a question. Earlier on, you had been very willing to agree to a reduction in size, but it wasn't quite clear to me exactly what you meant. We've heard a lot of comments over a period of time asking for a rather substantial reduction in things like the height, the bulk if there is a second story. Do you have any, once we close the public hearing, we'll be having discussions. One of the possibilities might be to condition this, if we approved it rather dramatically, another might be not to approve it. So I guess what I'm really wondering from you is, the neighbors have some real concerns about the height and bulk and mass of the building from several aspects, but one of which is that blocks the view. You have been apparently willing to reduce the bulk and the height, but it isn't clear to us how far you're willing to do that, because the submittal, on the one hand, might be 2.5 feet, and others 4. You want to give us any thoughts on any further reductions that you would be willing to do?
Yes, we will be open to reducing it further, especially the second story. We have opened it on the sides for more view corridors, and we have dropped it 4 feet so that the neighbor can have view down the hill. The reason you have that 2-foot discrepancy is because we've kept the volume of the house as it was. We've dropped it down into the grade 4 feet. So the roof, we actually went down 2.5. But the overall mass of it dropped down 4 feet, which is what is shown on the drawings.
Any other questions of the speaker? Thank you very much. Oh, pardon me, there's questions. Commissioner Sayoc.
I guess I'll just be very blunt. Would you completely eliminate the second story? Is that something that you and your clients have discussed?
It would be too difficult to get all the spaces that we need, that we have promised the clients, by completely eliminating the second story. There would be no place for us to put it in. We don't have the space like they do for a 4-car garage. And to go further into the hillside, as Suzanne was explaining, we are back against the setback, and we have reduced it so many times. And we think that with the architecture, with the landscape, with the stone at the base, the mass of it is drastically reduced.
Another question?
Yes, another question, please. Okay. The second is, you've agreed to a reduction in size to the second story. What other ideas do you have of possibly bringing the overall roof height down, knowing that there are concerns with the second? Can you reduce the ceiling height?
Yes. We're going to look at the overall design, and of course have to see which areas we have high ceilings, and see if we can move it around to lower the ceiling on both levels and bring the overall height down as much as possible. That wasn't one of what we had heard last time that we need to do. We met up with Suzanne afterward, the design team, and they were okay with just 2.5 feet. They said that would help it a lot, since it wasn't a requirement. But if it's a conditional requirement to bring it to a certain height, well, of course, the design team will meet that.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll close the public hearing now, and I'd like to either have some discussion from the commission or a suggested motion, and I think what we'll do on this particular matter is just start with Commissioner Bourgeois and move down the line.
Great, thank you. If I could start off with a question of staff, just to be clear on something you pointed out at the beginning, there is no continuing this item. It's either an approval with conditions or denial, or straight approval.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I was one of the commissioners at the previous meeting that strongly suggested a one-story element from the street, and I think this is, when you go down to Shannon Valley Ranch and you look up, this is a significant visual impact in my mind. Although the changes you've made do make a marginal improvement from the street as far as the bulk and mass, I think from the backside it's the same. I still have the exact same concerns, even with the vegetation. This is a significant ridge line in my mind from viewed from that perspective. The building really jumps out at you. So I was a little disappointed at the changes I saw, that they weren't on a grander scale, given the numerous directions that were given by this commission. So that's my inclination, and just to get things moving, I'm going to go ahead and make that into a motion for denial.
All right, we have a motion for denial. Is there a second?
I probably would support that after we finish a little more discussion on that, if I could.
Well,
or
there's
do
no
I
second.
need to have a second?
There are two possibilities. We can not have a second, in which case we can continue to discuss, or we can have a second, in which case we can also continue to discuss. So it's your pleasure. Is there a second? If not, the motion will fail. We can make it again. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's a permanent failure.
Well, I'd like to discuss it, I think, a little more before I just charge out there with a
Anyone
support.
else as far as second?
Unless somebody else wanted to.
Okay, if I can, I'll go ahead and second the motion and then explain the reason behind it. At the last meeting in August, I believe I was also very clear in that I specifically asked it be brought down to 18 feet. I know there was significant discussion versus the 18 versus 25, but at least my interpretation when I read the guidelines is if it's on a ridge line, bring it down to 18 feet as much as possible. And so since that was something that I had specifically requested, it shouldn't come as a surprise that I'm disappointed that it isn't at least brought down closer to 18 rather than where it is now. So I'll leave it as that. So.
All right. I'll go back to Commissioner Telesfor, and then I'll move down the line again. So you wanted to make some comments?
No, go ahead with it. I can come back. You can come back. Okay, I'll do it. Yes, thank you. I think I also was one of the commissioners. We really want you to build your home, but we have guidelines and standards that so many other people have followed, and the staff, I think, has tried to work with you on, the redesign, and I think we've picked up on that. But, we have guidelines and standards in the hillsides, and unfortunately, this is not a guideline about the building on a ridgeline. It happens to be a standard. And in the book, it says standards are mandatory, non-discretionary regulations that must be followed. I would imagine there could be a huge exception. I don't think there is in this case. I think there's a lot more design that could be done. That lot sits between two homes that are snuggled in, and it would be wonderful just to continue that so that you can become part of that neighborhood, take your place within it instead of, being so much standing out from it. When I drove on Shannon Road and looked up, that's quite a distance. Those story poles really stood out. I do think the building needs to come down, so I would say to either eliminate the second floor or bring it down to 18 feet.
Commissioner Erickson?
Even though I'm unable to vote on the issue, I did spend a considerable amount of time looking at the property and looking at the information that had been covered at the earlier meetings, and I would be very supportive of the perspective that both Commissioner Sayoc and Bourgeois presented tonight.
Thank you. I would just say this. Sometimes I think an applicant doesn't necessarily understand what we are about and what our guidelines are and that kind of thing. And I think that's unfortunately, it doesn't happen too often, but sometimes it's just a misunderstanding, and I get a feeling there is a misunderstanding this evening. We did raise these matters. This matter has been continued, 4 times, I think, something like that. But for some reason, I guess it hasn't been clear that the commissioners who asked you questions before were very disturbed by the size, the mass, and the bulk. We do appreciate that you tried to do something, but one, I don't think you've suggested to me tonight that you think it is cut and dried and there are certain legal rights you have. And clearly you may have rights, but within the ambit of what we're supposed to do, it's a very, I don't want to say fuzzy, but we have a lot of guidelines, we have a lot of standards. They're very helpful if you pay attention and read them. So if it were possible that we could approve this with conditions, I'd be in favor of that because I'm sympathetic to what you've been through. But I don't see how we can say we are now going to design your home as we sit here and here are the conditions. I don't think that would be fair to you either. So the long and the short of that is I too will support the motion to deny. Anything further? If there's not, all those who support the motion to deny say aye. Aye. Anyone opposing that? All right, so we have 4 commissioners in favor, and Commissioner Erickson has recused himself on this because he was not able to review all of the videos on this matter. Thank you very much. We're now moving to item 2. There are appeal rights, excuse me. Ms. Matthews, normally the attorney would say this, but he's not here.
There is a 10-day appeal period. Anyone that's dissatisfied with the Planning Commission's decision can file an appeal to the town council. It needs to be made in writing at the town clerk's office, and there is a fee.
When do we have to do that?
10 days.
10 days, 10 consecutive days.
Thank you. Okay, the second item is 15928 Union Avenue. This, too, is a matter we've had before us in the past. And in one moment, I'll ask Ms. Davis if she has a report on this matter.
This property is located on the east side of Union Avenue, just north of Blossom Hill Road, and it's immediately adjacent to a development that occurred on Leawood Court. The site is 0.93 acres. There is a 10-foot right-of-way dedication that will be required on Union Avenue, and that's going to reduce the overall land area remaining for lots to about 32,000 square feet. There's an existing residence and garage on the site that are proposed to be demolished. There was a previous proposal to subdivide this property into 4 lots, and that was denied by the Planning Commission in June 2008, and the applicant was directed to reduce the subdivision to 3 lots, which has now been done under this new submittal. We have 2 applications before you. One is an architecture and site application, and that is required because the single-family residence is proposed to be demolished, and then there's a tentative map to subdivide the property into 3 lots. If the subdivision is approved, the new residences would also require architecture and site applications. Those would be done at a later date and are separate noticed public hearing items. Parcels 1 and 2 are accessed from Panorama Way, which currently dead ends into the property right now, and parcel 3 is accessed from Union Avenue. We do have what appears to be a flag or corridor lot on that one parcel coming off of the cul-de-sac. It is not technically a flag lot based on zoning ordinance criteria. It's required to have 30 feet of frontage, which it does have. The reason it was designed in this manner was primarily to push the building envelope in a location that would allow some view corridors to be retained for residents over on Panorama to still see the hills. And we will also have a shared driveway for parcels 1 and 2 rather than having 2 separate driveways. The main issues that we'd like the Planning Commission to discuss are the lot configuration and whether you feel that's appropriate. There is a reduced right-of-way. The cul-de-sac itself does meet town and fire department standards, but the right-of-way is a little bit smaller than we would normally ask for. This can be approved by the deciding body if you feel it's appropriate. It's done on a case-by-case basis, and so I can't point to any other projects that are exactly the same as this one. The determination just needs to be made as to whether it's appropriate to do in this particular location given the property characteristics. Staff doesn't have a concern about the reduced right-of-way because we will still get landscaping, and there is still a public utility easement being provided. They're just being provided outside of the right-of-way area. There is a concern about whether there's a sidewalk or not. We've had some contact from some neighbors who would like to see a sidewalk all the way around the cul-de-sac. We haven't provided one. It is stubbed out at the driveway. It could possibly be provided. The applicant did provide several different scenarios for getting a sidewalk in there. It could go in the easement area potentially, or we could reduce the right-of-way area further to try to get a sidewalk in there if that's something that we decided is more desirable to have. We didn't feel it was necessary for really one house running on a cul-de-sac, but that is a discretionary item. A couple of other issues that were brought up are preservation of views and visual impact from the new homes. We do not have new home designs right now. As I mentioned, those will go through an architecture and site approval, and neighbors will have the ability to review and provide input on those homes at that time. The homes that are shown on the plan are really shown just for conceptual purposes to show that we can build 3 homes, that we have reasonable building sites, and that we can get access and utilities to those. And one other thing that did come up from a couple of people was drainage. We have looked at preliminary drainage design on this property. The property will have to comply with the MPDES requirements because it's going to have more than 10,000 square feet of impervious coverage. We feel that they can meet all those requirements. Engineering has done enough review of the plans to feel that they can comply with those. We don't have specific details of how it's going to happen right now because there's a number of ways that can be accomplished. If you'd like a little more detail, I can ask our engineers to comment on that for you. This is another application where we have a final date to take action. It's February 28th, so the application does need to be approved or denied on tonight's agenda. And there's a couple of findings that need to be made if the motion is for approval. There are required findings for demolition of the single-family residence, and there are also conditions from the State Subdivision Map Act, and those are sort of reverse findings. There's all those criteria that are listed from the Map Act. If you can make one of those findings, it's grounds for denial. So you'd have to basically state that you don't make any of the findings from the MAP Act and that you can make the findings for the demolition of the residence. And that concludes the staff report. If you have any questions, staff can answer those, hopefully.
Are there questions of Ms. Davis? Commissioner Sayak?
I actually have a question for you and then for our engineers. The first one, and before I do, I want to apologize. I have cough drops continuously in my mouth, so I just want to apologize to people. I think that's probably better than me coughing all night. But one of the suggestions provided during the public comment period was an alternative for a hammerhead. Could you just kind of walk me through the staff deliberations, why you felt the current proposal is better to you rather than a hammerhead design?
It doesn't meet town code requirements. Okay. It has a hammerhead. The fire department looked at it as well. They thought it might be okay, but it really wasn't their preference to do it in that manner. It's something they probably would have bought off on if it was the only way to accomplish it. But the bottom line was the town engineer looked at it and said it doesn't meet the town code. And so we eliminated that pretty early in the process when we were discussing that with the applicant.
Okay, that was easy enough. Thank you. And then I do want to hear more about the drainage issue and our staff interpretation of how you feel on that.
Based on the particular application, which is a tentative map, I mean, what they submitted to us at this time is adequate. And when the photo application comes in, then we'll ask for more detailed calculation. But then, at this time, with that, what they propose, and discussions with our, consultants on the C3, we feel is appropriate. Yeah.
Perhaps I could add that because we don't have specific development proposals right now, we don't really have the total impervious surface that's proposed. Because ultimately, we're going to be looking at what is the actual footprint and driveway and any other, walkways, other impervious surfaces that are being proposed. So we really need to see the ultimate plans that are proposed for the lots under the architecture and site applications to know how much impervious is proposed and what the differential will be between what's existing on the site, what the new will be. The bottom line is post runoff cannot increase over what's existing today.
All right. Commissioner Bourgeois?
Thank you. I asked Ms. Davis's question offline, but I would like to just ask it for everyone here present, and that is confirming the fact that we are just approving the subdivision and that even though on the plan sheets they may indicate two-story homes, we are in no way approving any sort of square footage or building height or one-story, two-story at this point.
Yeah, that is correct. And you do see some data on the tentative map, and that is showing you maximum heights that could potentially be achieved, maximum square footage based on FAR calculations. Those are not being approved or in any way endorsed.
And the architecture and site applications would then go back through the normal process and could end up here but could be approved at DRC level.
Yes, it could go either way. If we have enough issues with neighbors that we can't resolve, it would certainly come before the Planning Commission.
Great, thank you.
How many commissioners have gone out to see the site? So everyone here tonight has seen the site. Mr. Jean, I assume you're going to speak. I don't have a card from you, but I'll call you now anyway. And then you can submit a card later. Thank you. We're ready for you.
Can I just make sure that this works? Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tony Jeans, 170 Stacia Street, Los Gatos, and I am representing Mr. Grant as the applicant on this project. I'll be doing the architecture and site design when this comes before you, as I presume it will, at least on some of these lots. And I want to try and deal with where we are now. As Suzanne Davis said, it came originally as a 4-lot subdivision. You suggested 3. We're proposing 3. Some of the neighbors have said, well, why don't you make it 2? We think 3 is appropriate, and we would request that you give this serious consideration. I was a little disappointed when this was continued without a hearing last time, especially as Mr. Mangano was actually in the audience. But it turned out, I think, to be a blessing in disguise, and I backed off a little bit afterwards because it gave me an opportunity to, I think, reach a compromise proposal, which I'd like to put before you on the cul-de-sac, which is one of the issues here. But let me try and address the points that were made in various letters that came before you, and I'll try and do that. I think I did send you a letter, so I'm assuming you've read that, but let's look at a few little pictures and see if we can see what I was talking about. Staff believes the lot is compatible with the neighborhood, but I just want to address what we have here. Panorama is up here. The lots on Panorama are 8 or 9,000 square feet. In the tapes that I reviewed from the previous application for 4 lots when I wasn't involved, there was concern about these are all 80-foot wide lots, and why are you doing 60-foot wide lots here? Well, we're doing an 80-foot wide lot here, and we're pushing the other one off the cul-de-sac. So it's no longer an impact, a visual impact on Panorama. So I'm trying to retain absolute compatibility with Panorama. The lot sizes down here on Leeward are all a little over 10,000. I've retained that size here, which I think is appropriate. I've had a larger lot on Union. This is the dedication that is given away to, to the town. And so a larger lot will exist on Union because that's where larger lots are typically. So I think compatibility, the town believes, the staff believes it's compatible. I think they're right. The next thing is pretty major. I'm trying to retain, primarily for Mr. Mangano and Ms. Leinert, who is on Union, as much of a view of the hills as possible. So the hills are down here. These homes, Mr. Mangano and where Mr. Leinert, Ms. Leinert lives, what I wanted to do was try and give a slim profile opposite their house, so that the houses which are currently on Leeward, which are blocking their views of the hills, where there is a house already on Leeward, I'll put a house in front of it. Where there is a gap between 2 houses on Leeward, I will allow a view corridor so that I'm not blocking any existing view of the hills that they already have. Ms. Leinert has a real concern about a really nice patio area outside, not her house, which has very small windows here, but she wants to be able to see the views through here. So I've tried to retain that. Now, everything that I've done in creating a rather unusual configuration for 3 lots is done expressly for those 2 homeowners. Mr. Mangano here and Ms. Leinert here. They may or may not like the fact that there are homes next to them, but specifically with Mr. Mangano, we've got a corridor down here, which is a shared driveway, which forces me to push that house away. This area here is the building envelope. So no matter what I do when I design the homes, I have to build the homes inside those envelopes. So I'm forcing myself into a position that I have to respect Mr. Mangano's view corridors. To show you the actual line of the view corridors, I'm showing you, we sat on his porch back in, I don't know, October, November, something like that. And he said, this is important to me that I have those views of the hills between these houses. I said, I will try to come up with a lot design that allows that to happen. I didn't speak with Ms. Lynott at that time, but I did see what she needed. I saw that there were small windows here, and I saw her I peered over the fence, and I looked at her nice little patio area, and I said, that is important to retain. Mr. Mangano presented a picture at the bottom saying, I've got a beautiful view now, and this is what I'm going to get. Help me. I'm going to clarify that a little bit. I think this is a very unfair representation. The view corridor continues out here and to the left, and is much wider than his representation allows. At my rebuttal.
Yes, but we'll have some questions. Your time is up, but let's see if there are any questions, and you will have rebuttal too.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Mr. Bourgeois.
Mr. Jeans, I would like for you to get to the sidewalk and the cul-de-sac discussion, if you wouldn't mind elaborating on those options.
Okay, I'll... Thank you for the question. This is what your deferral allowed me to do, and I hope it's worth the time, and I'll try and explain it to you. At the top, we have a broad picture of what we have proposed. The existing fence is along the property line here. We're proposing a sidewalk terminating with a handicap ramp each side. The kids play mainly in the street, and I don't really see people going around a sidewalk. Having said that, 2 or 3 neighbors have said, you know, a sidewalk I think would be nice, and if you can come up with the idea of doing that, we'd like you to do that. And your postponement or continuance enabled me to do that. First of all, let me look at the second one, which is if we take a sidewalk around a standard size cul-de-sac and give 5 feet here so the sidewalk can squeeze by, and another 5 feet here so that the sidewalk can come around here, we've actually pushed this across 10 feet. The big concern that I have for this is Mr. Mangano's view of the hills will now be destroyed. It doesn't concern you here, but when I come to you at an A&S hearing and I can't give him a view of the hills that I really want to give him, it's going to be disappointing for me, disappointing for you, and very disappointing for Mr. Mangano. So I struggled with this, and I said, how do I do it? How do I come up with something? So I thought a little bit more, and I said, okay, this little box is a required fire truck turnaround area. It's a 40 by 50 area or a hammerhead or whatever. But hammerheads are ugly. The town doesn't like them. Panorama, I don't think, would like to see a hammerhead at the end. It would be an ugly termination of the street. But you have the ability to approve a hillside diameter fire truck turnaround. What that does is it reduces it from a 36-foot radius, I believe, Tran, down to 32. And I would then put the sidewalk around, all the way around. It still allows this fire truck turnaround within it. And it would give us a compromise because I'm not pushing this out that extra 10 feet. That line here still is the same line as though I were doing a big fat cul-de-sac around at the top, but at the bottom I've got the sidewalk around. It's a little more compact, but it gives you the opportunity to give them a sidewalk. And if there are enough people in the neighborhood who say, give us a sidewalk, give us a sidewalk, give us a sidewalk, I would really request that you go this way so that when I come back to you at Architecture and Site, I can give Mr. Mangano his view corridor, I can give the neighbors their sidewalk, and it wouldn't have been a waste of time, the fact that you continued the hearing. So to answer your question, that's what that is all about, and I can answer more questions on it if you have specifics.
Any follow-up? Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The first speaker card I have on this matter is Luis Martinez.
Yes, good evening.
Mr. Martinez, just for the record, would you state your full name and your address?
Luis Martinez, 101 Leewood Court. I'm right behind the big property that faces Union. My biggest concern right now is the removal of all the trees that we have back there right now. And I voiced my concern to Tony and Jeff, and I told them that what I have right now is beautiful. Even though they're ugly trees, they're still trees, and it's beautiful. I'm concerned that they're going to remove them all, and I told them it would be nice if you were to put some trees in between their property and our property so we can have at least some greenery back there. And I think that's something that they're willing to do, and I hope that it gets at one point put down in some type of plan that happens. The trees that are alongside the street, what they do is they cover all the traffic that goes by there. I mean, that is a traffic street. Every time I look over, all you see is cars stop, and there's all these lights. The trees take that away. If those trees go away, I'm sorry, yeah. What he's done is he's put some trees back there, which hopefully will fix my point. So I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Just one second. Are there any questions to Mr. Martinez? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
John Schwartz.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. My name is John Schwartz. I live at 104 Panorama Way. I'd like to, again, thank you, actually, for deferring this item. I know it wasn't convenient for a lot of folks, but several of us were not able to attend last month, and we do appreciate you holding off. As you know, I have submitted several letters over the last year about this site, and so I won't belabor everything that I've put in writing, some of the questions and concerns that we've had in the past, but I just would like to hit a few of the main items that I have. I do agree with Mr. Jeans that the design is much better than it was previously, and we do appreciate Mr. Grant and Mr. Jeans' efforts to accommodate some of our concerns, and I do appreciate Mr. Grant's rights to do something with the property. However, one of my main complaints is that I still don't think the proposed subdivision will be compatible with the neighborhood, and I know we're not talking about home design tonight, but the fact is, as we all know, the subdivision will lay the framework for the floor area ratio, the allowable square footages, and the design of those lots. And so really when we come back and hear about the home design, this will essentially be decided. The other main question that I have is it's still not clear to me whether this project really qualifies for the CEQA exemption. I disagree with Ms. Davis that, or I have a question, I guess, that hasn't quite been answered. The big question that needs to be answered about whether the CEQA exemption applies is whether there are no variances or design exceptions required for the project. Staff report indicates that there are no variances needed for the project, but it seems to indicate that the cul-de-sac right-of-way, the landscaping, the parcel 2, what we've been referring to as a flag lot, don't seem exactly standard to me.
Surprise.
If you want me to stop, I'll just stop.
We're going to give you a little more time.
That's fine. What I was saying is the staff report seems to reference that the cul-de-sac right-of-way, the landscaping, and the parcel 2 may not really be standard designs. And my question is, and it actually says, as Ms. Davis said earlier, there are no other similar projects to refer you to that are like this. So to me, that doesn't jive with the fact that this is an exemption that meets all the city's standard design and access requirements. The other thing I found curious is the previous agenda item was a single lot that you prepared a negative declaration for, yet many months ago I stood here and requested a negative declaration initial study process for this project so that the neighborhood could have an opportunity to publicly comment, recognizing the site is fairly small under CEQA standards, but we felt that many issues had been raised and it would warrant, at least practically, do you want me to keep going?
Take a few more seconds.
That at least, even if you could say technically you might fit for the exemption, I felt that it would behoove the town to put this out to the public, take input, given that there was so much concern and controversy. The last point I have about that is that I find it strange also that we, the town, are requiring in the conditions of approval payment of the traffic impact mitigation fee. If there is no impact and this project is exempt, why are we requiring mitigation? To me, that sets up a legal nexus. If there's a mitigation requirement, there must be an impact that's proportional under CEQA. I also have some of the similar questions about drainage and trees and the sound wall on Union, but I'll take any questions if you have any. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Let's see if there are questions. Are there some questions of the speaker? Commissioner Tallis.
Very quickly, where do you live? I mean, you're on
I live at
Panorama?
104 Panorama Way. It's a couple of lots above Mr. Mangano's lot.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you. Oh, yes.
Just out of curiosity, of the three proposals that the applicant has submitted, one with the sidewalk, he presented it 1, 2, and 3. What's your personal favorite? If you had to go with this.
I actually haven't had a chance to look at them other than tonight, and so I would love to look at the drawings a little bit more closely. So I really can't answer that. I appreciate that Mr. Jeans has designed, at least for me, more so than the immediate neighbors, the fact that the view shed corridor down Panorama would essentially look very similar to me as it does today. I do appreciate that, and that would, I guess, be relatively the same under each of those three cul-de-sac scenarios. So for my own benefit, that's a plus. I do know that some of the neighbors, and you'll probably hear more about this, have indicated, and myself included, that a sidewalk would be nice because although oftentimes people are out in the street, there are quite a few folks who do on a daily basis jog, run, walk their dog up and down our street, and they cross the street. So I'm sure they would make the loop down the sidewalk instead if that was available. So.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker card I have is for Stephanie Lenat.
Stephanie Lynett. I'm at 15910 Union Avenue, and I am on the half acre that butts up against the property, parallel to it. All three houses that are proposed, or the three lots that are proposed, are, in my view, they will impact my privacy, for sure. They will impact the view, for sure. The proposal next to my house, even though the windows are small, they're corner windows of my bedroom, and the central one is my bathroom. And all three of those views will be impacted. Privacy, major lighting will be impacted. And that is where the afternoon sun comes in from that end of the house. I certainly appreciate the fact that he wants to keep the quarter open in my backyard. I'm an avid gardener and landscaper, so I appreciate that. But I don't know. I see what happened across the street with the Tersini development, and I know Mr. Tersini has written a couple letter of recommendations for this project. He feels that, these developments are going to help change the community. I think what he needs to do is these developments they need to conform with the community, not try to change the community. And this community is a single level, down-to-earth property. We don't need, my family's been here 70 years. I've lived my entire time in the town. I've seen many meadows, orchards, and everything go to tarmac and stucco. And that is what's happening over there on Union. My view out the front window
with the elevation that Tersini did and the sound wall and this huge other wall. I've got like 2.5 stories of sound wall booming into my yard. So when they say sound wall next door and garage next door, that was a proposal, I believe, parallel to my side of my house. You know, that'll just be a noise quarter down there. I have a noise quarter on the other side from the other sound wall. So, you know, there are many elements that I look at, you know, when I'm thinking about this. So I look at the view, privacy, lighting, the sound walls, utility poles, where are they going to go? There are 2 utility poles on that property, or power poles, I don't know what you call them, those big logs. 2 of them are there. Where are they going to go when the road is recessed back again? Is it going to go diagonal across out to the front of my property where the other power pole might be? Can I put a picture up here? I did bring pictures, but I'll submit to you. I probably don't have time enough right now. But this would be, it's probably going to be a little bit funny because of the shine. But anything that you see beyond, this is a 4-foot wall in my yard. Anything beyond that, greenery will be gone. The lighting will be gone. The view will be gone. And I will be looking at house and structure of a house. That'll impair the lighting in my backyard. It will impair the privacy and lighting in my house. And that doesn't mention the view of what the other 2 houses do in the back 5-acre where there is a rental unit.
Thank you. Are there questions of the speaker? Commissioner Talasford.
Do you live in a 1-story or a 2-story?
It's a 1-story house, and there are pictures in here that show you what will happen. Right here, I just kind of drew black lines across that would show you the peak of my 1-story, which is a pretty low-key. You know, I look at the across the street at the Tersini development. That's a 1-story house, and my goodness, it's worth 3. So that's, if you see the black line that I've drawn across both of those, you know, that's where your blockage would be. You know, that's where your housing would be. You know, if you look at this one here, you know, not only are you looking at the blockage, if they take out those trees that have been proposed, the big Chinese elm and the pine thing that's next to it, that is going to totally open up the rear end of the, is it Leawood up above me? I think that's Leawood.
Excuse me.
Okay, I'm sorry. Anyway,
okay.
But this is all trying to answer Mrs. Talasford's
The question was, did you have a single-story house? I think you've answered
I
that.
do.
Appreciate
I do.
that. Thank you.
I could go for an hour.
There's another question.
Yes.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
If I could follow up, if you wouldn't mind putting the other 2 pictures back up there.
Oh, with the lines?
Yes. What are you basing those lines on?
Just, it's nothing technical like many people would do here. It's off the peak of my house. That is the highest point of my single-story house.
Okay.
So that I just drew it out so that if there were a single-story house, and most single-story houses will be much taller than that, especially when you get into a 2.5-foot elevation for the crawl space.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. The next speaker card I have is for Cecilia Holmberg.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Cecilia Holmberg. I live at 103 Panorama. I wanted to start by pointing out that in the staff report, it looks like there are a couple of errors or points that don't make sense. Ms. Davis mentioned that parcel 1 was on Panorama and parcel 3 was on...
Could I ask you to get a little closer to the microphone?
Ms. Davis mentioned that parcel 1 was on Panorama and parcel 3 was on Union, and on the packet it's the other way around, so I just wanted to clarify and point that out. And also on page 3, item A, the homes, it seems to skew this towards pointing out that there are more 2-story homes in the neighborhood than there are. The house on the east is a single-story house, not a 2-story house. And it fails to mention that the one across the street and to the east is also a 1-story, not a 2-story. So just wanted to point that out. My family and I were against the original proposal for the property, and unfortunately we're still opposed to the current design. We think that the center lot, the way that it's laid out, creates a really odd sort of a back alley feel for that property. It doesn't seem like, you know, it empties out onto our street. It's supposed to be part of our neighborhood, but it's kind of out by itself. It's, you know, it doesn't actually have any immediate neighbors. We think that is going to result in a very odd layout there. The sidewalk thing, not a nice to have. We would probably really strongly insist on that. I mean, we have 10, almost 12 kids on our street. And as Mr. Schwartz was saying, we're really popular with joggers and other, people wandering the neighborhood. They would really, I think, need that sidewalk for a safety point. The drainage is a big concern for all of us. Every house on our street either has a sump pump or a French drain. The storms lately, everybody's kind of sleeping with one eye out the door, watching the water levels. So I know that they're saying that we're not approving houses right now, but to say that we can't make an estimate right now because we don't have house plans is, I think, sort of disingenuous. I don't know. It seems like anything built there is going to negatively impact the drainage situation, which is already pretty tough. We also are very concerned about the potential elevation of the houses. Would like to make sure that, if there's any way possible that if these lots are going to get approved the way that they're drawn, we would like to see some sort of a contingency put on that so that the houses are single story and, with a level underground or something like that. There's a lot of concern too. There's Mr. Grant and his employees have, said a lot of things over the course of this project that have been not quite true. There's a lot of distrust, I think, amongst the neighbors. So a lot of these loopholes and sort of, things that are vague right now because we're not deciding about the houses, I think we are all very uncomfortable with it because we're concerned that, we're sort of being pushed into approving this one part and then it's going to make us, it's just, he's saying that he's working with the neighbors and it's not happening.
Thank you very much. Your time is up. But are there questions of this speaker? Thank you very much. The next speaker is Geoff Mitchell, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much for the chance to speak. My name is Geoff Mitchell. I live at 115 Panorama. I'll just put this up. So, get this positioned. The property that we're talking about is this parcel. The property we're talking about is this parcel right here, and this is our home. We live at 115 Panorama Way. I think that a number of things have been discussed over the course of this process, and I'm just like John, I'm not going to belabor all of the details, but there are some things I really want to focus on today. One of them is being, if you look at the way that this neighborhood is laid out, it is a series of 5 single-story homes on these properties. This property is just an extension of that neighborhood. Now, it's been alluded to that they're planning around the way that the neighborhood looks, but I think what's happening is they're looking across the street at a development that exists there, or they're referring to Leawood Court. And Leawood Court is not really the neighborhood that this is impacting. This is going on to Union and Panorama Way. The other point I'd like to make is historically, when this lot here existed and was initially developed, the request was made by the builders to build 3 two-story homes. That was 41,000 square feet, and the response was no, 2 lots and 2 lots only, conforming with the existing layouts. And of those 2 lots, they were insistent upon no two-story homes. I look at this example, and I look at this example, and I see a reflection. And I think that the point that we're trying to make for Union and Panorama Way is that anything that's developed in this property should simply be a natural progression of the existing neighborhood. That's one of the biggest concerns we have. Sticking into that configuration, a set of 3 homes, which will clearly be 2 stories, there's no doubting that, at least that would be the desire, breaks the way the natural neighborhood flow works. Another point I want to make is that drainage has come up, and I, along with several of my neighbors, have spent Friday and Saturday under our houses in mud and water, dealing with sump pumps and things of such nature. From what I've come to learn, the finished floor height for the home that would be at the end of Panorama Way will actually be 4 feet higher than the street. So that indicates that this cul-de-sac would have some sort of an arc, or the I hate to, I wouldn't call it a driveway. I think of In-N-Out Burger drive-through, a little more appropriate, but this driveway would have to be a very high ramp, and all of the water, with the exception of that 10-foot section here, all of this water, this is the high point, is flowing down towards Panorama, and it's causing us a lot of hardship.
Thank you. Are there questions? Yes, Commissioner Bourgeois?
I would like to see maybe if our staff engineers have any comments on the drainage concerns and the finished grade. I'm sorry, I know you weren't quite listening. Do you have any response or to his comments about the concerns on the drainage?
Well, as I mentioned, this is an application for subdivision map, and so we look at
I
it.
can't hear you, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm fighting a cold too, so yeah. Can you hear me better?
A little bit.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, this application for subdivision map, so we look at it as within the guideline of reviewing the subdivision map act, even though we look at the drainage issues, what potentially could be, happen after this project is approved, if it get approved. And, guideline is the drainage, it will maintain, the pre and the post will need to meet the requirements. So there are conditions within the condition of approval to address those when the, future application comes on board, so that they don't exceed any more drainage than what they are right now, as
It
right now.
seems hard to think that something that's raised 4 feet above the sidewalk
Excuse me,
within...
we have rules that may not sound sensible to you, but one of them is we don't allow conversations to go on because sometimes they distract from what we're doing. So you've asked.
I'm going to get my Citizen Jeff hat.
There's only one, believe me. All right. I think that's the answer in any event, whether you accept it or not. That is the answer. But does anyone else have any questions? If not, thank you very much. Paul, I think DeBella? DeBella, yes.
Hello, Chairman and Planning Commissioners, staff. Oh, sorry. Hello, my name is Paul DeBella. I'm a neighbor east of the proposed development. I live in a single-story home. It's about 3,700 square feet. And I've been a resident for 7 years. My family loves Los Gatos, and especially this neighborhood. I like the idea of a full-size cul-de-sac because I live on a hammerhead. It's not predicted here, but shown here, but it's right here. It's real difficult for garbage, the street sweepers to get into that area. Many of our residents walk in our neighborhood on a regular basis. We have families with toddlers that use bikes, strollers, many older couples and handicapped individuals who would have a problem if there was not a sidewalk all the way around the cul-de-sac. Excuse me. I really feel that this would be the best interest of the citizens of Los Gatos, especially for their safety. On a personal, I could see a constant problem with vehicles backing into my fence without the sidewalk. Most large vehicles have an overhang about 7 feet off the wheels, and when they turn, they need a certain amount of radius to turn around. So a sidewalk or a planter strip would help. I believe the town of Los Gatos should do the right thing and make sure our community has a proper cul-de-sac for safety reasons. Because once approved, there will be no going back, then our neighborhood will have to deal with the problem forever. Please consider our neighborhood safety. The property that my home was developed on was exactly the same scenario as the proposed property. It's just under an acre. And at the time, the developer, which was Panorama of Los Gatos joint venture, and the guy that was running the project was Bob Hughes, had submitted to the Planning Commission to have it 3 parcels and 2-story homes, and they were denied, both of them. Before the construction of our home, also, the planning department made him lower the roof pitch of our single-story home because it was too high for the neighborhood. And I was just wondering if the planning department has changed the rules as far as that. Anyhow, that's all I have to say. Is there any questions?
Are there questions? Thank you very much.
Okay.
The next speaker is Jeff Hickey. Next would be Thomas Mangan.
Yeah, I'm Thomas Mangano, 112 Panorama Way, and just a couple corrections. I was not here at the beginning of the meeting last time, so Tony, I wasn't hiding. I came in later at the vote time. I basically stand by my January 26th letter, and if Tony thinks I was disingenuous with my representation here, he's had a month to address that with me, but I haven't seen him. My big concern is we're all assuming 3 houses should go there. I would question if we have enough information to say that 3 houses would go there. My house, original house, was built in 1963. I had to tear that down in 2002. The primary reason was water. My old house had water under it for 4 to 5 months a year. My sump pump is currently pumping now, and I almost fell out of bed when I looked at this plan because the proposal is proposing a bioswale that runs parallel within 5 feet of my French drain. And when I addressed this with engineering, I got the same garbage, that no calculations have been done. I'm 60 years old. I don't want to build another house when I'm 100. And I want to see some calculations on drainage before we approve 3 lots. We don't have it. This guy wouldn't even cut his grass until 11:59. And now I'm supposed to believe that he will maintain a bioswale correctly. He's an LLC. When he sells his 3 houses, he's gone. So I'm disappointed that staff, I'm disappointed that engineering rubber stamped this. I've been up here for 20 years saying we have a drainage problem, and the answer is we'll take care of it later. It's unacceptable. We do not know what 3 houses, we do know. We know we're going to put hardscape. We know we're pushing 1 acre of water right to my house. It's unacceptable to me, and it should be unacceptable to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of the speaker? Thank you again, sir. Clifford Bechtel? Okay.
I'm Clifford Bechtel, designer of the plans up there, Clifford Bechtel and Associates.
Let me stop you for 1 second.
Yeah.
It's our normal procedure that if the applicant speaks, what I suggest we do is when we come to rebuttal by the applicant, you share that with Mr. Jeans.
That's fine.
Thank you very much.
That's what I kind of expected, but
that's I'm not blaming you for it. Mr. Orv, is it Busing?
I'm Orville Busing. I live at 15892 Union Avenue. I am next to Ms. Linett, second house north of the property that's under discussion. I have two items I'd like to address again and merely build on top of what has been said. The drainage is a concern. I, along with Tom and many others, spent time swimming under my house within the last 10 days with sump pumps in my backyard. And I don't know if I have a picture here, and I don't know if it will show. This is my backyard here. This is coming from Miss Lila's property, runs into my backyard. This is the front street coming from the property above. Looking at this is Miss Lila's property, and the front, the drainage running down her driveway into my backyard and under the houses. So we do have a problem in the engineering department. This is already has 3 developments, 2 on Lassoon Court and 1 on Leeward Court, that we're going to be taking care of this over the years. In each instance, we've had, seems like, increased problems. So I just want to say, alert the engineering department, is that, folks, we have a problem. Help us mitigate it. Don't pass it off as, oh, we'll do it when it comes together. The second thing is, I'd like to address is the sound or retaining wall. It's beginning to look, coming down from Blossom Hill Road, like we're going to be driving along Highway 85 with the walls that are being put up and a tunnel approach. I don't think that's what we want in the town of Los Gatos. I certainly don't. I've lived in my house since 1973, truly enjoyed living in Los Gatos and being a part of the community. The town wall, or the sound wall, or the wall in the Tersini development, from the sidewalk grade to the top of the wall is 10 feet high. This is supposed to be a 6-foot wall. Well, by the time you make the pad and built the pad up 4 feet, which was above the poles that had been set up on the property, and I have pictures to show that, this is what happens, and this is where the planning department, the inspector, and the engineering department need to step up to the plate and protect us. Staff has used in the report with Ms. Davis the term sound wall. Mr. Davis material that
Finish this thought.
Mr. Davis's material, or Mr. Jean's material, uses a term retaining wall. I don't know if they're one and the same, or if there's a retaining wall being proposed along with a sound wall. And I would ask for clarification on that.
All right.
Thank you.
Are there questions of the speaker? Thank you very much. Now, unless Citizen Ray is sitting on his card again, we're finished with our speakers. But guess what? He's sitting on his card. That's such a surprise, Ray. Thank you. It's really a cute trick.
I'm impressed with the new chairman.
I'm impressed with you, Ray. I always am.
Hey, you one-upping me.
I don't want to do that.
I would like to see an engineering person come back.
You could speak now if you'd like to. I don't know where she is. I can't produce her.
Anybody else? Yes, speaking in the public interest, okay? I feel real sorry for all these folks from Panorama Way, okay? Particularly those who know engineering. They don't understand, I'm sure, because they haven't been down at the meetings, that up to 5 years ago, all the engineering deliberations were done at this time, before the Planning Commission. So you could speak your piece in detail on engineering, and you could hire an expert if you were not an expert. And it was perfect. 5 years ago, Lortz and Company, the same group that I repeatedly call out for their deceit and dishonesty. They moved all the engineering down to the engineering department so that the developers meet in secret with these employees. In secret.
Citizen Ray.
No
Citizen
oversight.
Ray, you know as well as I do, you address us.
Well, can't you hear me?
That's not the point, and I can stop you if you do not comply with.
And you're going to shoot me?
No, I'll do something better than that. So talk to us or don't talk.
Well, you show me the rule that is appropriate.
Ray, that's one warning.
I know it's a warning, I know.
2, you want to try for 3, or would you like to talk to us?
I'm following the rules, and you're not.
You can talk to us, or you can leave.
I don't talk to you!
And if you yell at me one more time, you will leave.
Oh, well. Oh, all of
Go
a
ahead,
sudden.
push it,
oh.
Ray.
You want to shut up, and I'll go on.
You are one of the rudest men I know.
Well, excuse me, I'm honest.
I
And I know you're a real estate attorney.
Finish your conversation.
What you're doing on the planning commission with a real estate attorney is beyond me.
It certainly is.
Beyond me. Anyway, before I was rudely interrupted by the real estate attorney, these people meet in secret and listen to the developer's pitch, okay? And they come out here tonight and give carte blanche approval to it. And the final plans haven't even been submitted. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's disgusting. So when are we going to call the FBI and clean out the cesspool? Or what? And I'll take you along with it, too, O'Donnell.
Thank you, Ray.
Anytime.
Are there any questions of this gentleman? Thank you. We're going to take a recess at the moment for 5 minutes.
He needs it.
The meeting, may I please have your attention? I think I'm through with all of the speaker cards from everyone but the applicant's now rebuttal. But before the applicant does give its rebuttal, I would like to ask the town attorney to comment on a question that has come up that will be significant this evening, I believe, and it is on the application of the categorical exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act, which is what we're proceeding under. So if Mr. Korb could help us on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, as you know from the report before you tonight, the project is recommended with the categorical exemption under CEQA that would apply to minor land divisions. A speaker brought up a very valid point earlier that the criteria for applying that categorical exemption, one of the criteria for applying that categorical exemption is that there can be no variances or exceptions, and that's the specific language of the guideline. The staff report makes clear that in order to approve the turnabout with less than 42 feet of right-of-way, an exception has to be granted. So from the very language of the staff report, the categorical exemption would not apply. So what I'm basically, in summary, telling the Commission is that in order that the only way that the Commission could act on the application tonight, or at least approve the application tonight, if that was your inclination, under the categorical exemption as recommended by staff, would be to approve it with a right-of-way of 42 feet or more in compliance with the town guidelines. If you don't feel as though you can do that, your options would be to deny the application or to send it back for further analysis under CEQA.
Do you have a question, Commissioner Sapp?
This is for our attorney, I'm sorry. We can't extend it. I believe we have a deadline tonight. So if there are these issues that are pending, we just have to act today. Is that correct?
Well, in fact, there's a debate about the applicability of the automatic approval provision under the Subdivision Map Act, because you cannot technically approve a subdivision without making general plan compliance findings. That's a mandatory requirement, and you cannot approve a subdivision without having done adequate CEQA. So my advice would be you can only deny a subdivision application under the finding requirements that are in your staff report. If you can't make those findings, then I would say continue the application for additional environmental review if it is necessary to do so, because a right-of-way of less than 42 feet has to be considered. And we'll just take our chances with that, because I think that's the only appropriate way to proceed.
The applicant could agree to waive the 50-day requirement as well. If the applicant can agree to waive the 50-day requirement.
I'm confused now. If there is a requirement that we have to decide this by the date certain that you gave us, and we were to extend it beyond that date, if I understand the town attorney, he's not worried about that time.
Right. His point is if we have to do any kind of, if we need to do an environmental analysis, then the application's not really complete. We need to bring it back, and then we'd have another 50-day requirement.
Okay. And to be clear, conceptually, it is possible to approve this project tonight so long as we didn't have to grant an exception. Right. So I think it's certainly clear in my mind. If anybody else has any other questions, we should ask them now. And I wanted to make this, I just found out about this. I wanted the applicant to be aware of it too, so that to the extent that you can, you might speak to that too, because we'll have to act upon council's advice.
Can I ask a question on clarification before I start?
1 second. Yes, Commissioner Bourgeois.
I'm having trouble grasping the ramifications of the 42-foot right-of-way to the design. Is that a question for staff, or is that a question for Mr. Jeans?
It can be provided. It shifts the building envelopes. It changes the lot configurations. So those would modify.
But that's not we don't know what that lot configuration would look like. We do?
You won't know exactly. It will modify it slightly because the right-of-way will get bigger, which will push the parcel 3. Parcel 3, the configuration would change on it. It would change parcels 2 and 3.
Okay.
Because the cul-de-sac's going to come closer in.
Right. Okay. So everything just gets pushed and squeezed, but we don't have an exact configuration.
But
right.
Wait a minute, and let's do this in a moment. When the applicant speaks, we can certainly address those questions to him too, and then the commission will have to make up its own mind what we specifically have before us. We've got a lot of advice, but we'll have to determine the application. So are there other questions of council or staff? And I don't know if Mr. Jeans was asking us a question that should be addressed to the town attorney before he proceeds. Were you, sir?
I would like some clarification, please. Yeah.
From the town attorney?
I believe so.
What, can you, just in general, or you have a specific point?
I think it's specific.
Why don't you state what it is then?
We can go one of two ways. We can say, please approve this with a 42-foot turnaround. That removes the requirement for a neg deck, but it pinches the view corridor on Mr. Mangano. But it makes us compliant. I'm not sure it's the right way to go, but I've just been told it's going to take 2 to 3 months to get a neg deck. Mr. Grant doesn't want to wait 2 to 3 months to get a neg deck approved. So if we say we are prepared to accept 42 feet, is the Planning Commission allowed to grant us 36 feet because they are allowed within their rules to modify and approve a slightly revised turnaround? So my question is that allowable? We'll go with 42 feet, but if they approve 36, can it continue?
I appreciate the question, but to be fair to Mr. Korb, he is here to give us advice and not to give general advice. We will be discussing the very issue you're raising, but I think for purposes of present time, you should assume that the only thing we have the right to do tonight, if we were to approve it, is to go for 42 feet, because that would not be an exception. So I will tell you that that's the way I believe we've been advised. So I just don't want to have a debate. I mean, I think your questions are probably very fair, but it isn't the way we want to proceed tonight.
Right.
If you're questioning the attorney. Would you like to proceed?
Sure. Most of the other points I can probably deal with. There were some points brought up by Ms. Leinert about sound wall, about retaining walls, etc. Those were holdovers from previous plans. We're not talking about sound walls here. I don't particularly like the idea of a sound wall on Union. I don't want a corridor all the way down to 85 with sound walls. However, I haven't looked at it, and I don't know if it's the right way to go. That's an A&S issue. I want to take it off the table for this discussion. I'm not asking for one. I'm not asking for you to tell me no. Nor am I asking for a single-story or two-story. I did promise Ms. Leinert that the garage area adjacent to her house, I would try to make single-story, and I would retain the view corridor through here. Where she penciled her line was showing a house here, which doesn't exist. So I am trying to give her the view corridor. I'm really trying to work with the wishes of the neighbors, even though there's been some animosity in the past. Now, let's get to the real point, and that's 36 feet versus 42. 42 is what we request, if that's what we have to request, because we don't want to wait 3 months. However, it's not what we want. We want you to go find a way to talk to Mr. Korb, the town attorney, and find a way to get that slightly reduced cul-de-sac approved within the framework of the 36-foot radius
Mr. Korb, let me save you some time.
that we have up here down at the bottom.
Pardon me, Mr. Jeans, I'm sorry. I just don't want you to waste your time because you have a limited amount of time. I believe we will follow the advice of our attorney, and for you to argue with us, in essence, not to follow the advice, you can do that, and we'll listen, but I just want to...
Then please approve this with 42 feet.
Okay, but you say whatever you want to say about everything.
I would like to give Mr. Mangano the best view corridor possible. If I have to go 36 feet, it becomes 42. That's 4 feet extra each side. It pushes the lots across approximately 8 feet. And in doing that, he loses a little bit of his view. And I'm going to have to deal with that at Architecture and Site. That is why I want 36. But if you're going to have to give me 42, give me 42, because Mr. Grant has already waited a very long time, and maybe the first portion would...
Because of this back and forth, why don't we give you another minute to finish up your talk?
Okay. I'm going to put a picture up. Which I think was a picture of... Let me get this oriented the right way. Here's the lot. And this is where we're trying to put 3 lots down here. It would be the correct size, 10,000 or so feet. And I want to look at the larger lots down here, which are around 20,000 feet. We're having to cede several thousand feet of the front of the lot for a dedication. When these lots are eventually developed further, they will have to cede that. But look at every single one of them. House, 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 house. That's the way it goes on down here. So even though they're single lots, they have 2 houses on. They've got a house behind them. We're perpetuating that 3-house situation all the way along. Not only are we being compatible with the neighborhood homes, we're being compatible with the actual placement of homes. Thank you.
All right. Are there questions of the speaker? Commissioner Telesfor.
Speaking of the cul-de-sac, we didn't talk about this, but I have a question. How will the parking work in that cul-de-sac? Or will there not be parking?
I suspect that parking will not be allowed, which is why we've provided parking, or I've designed something that allows parking off the shared driveway at the individual homes. I suspect it'll be either painted red or be a no parking area. I haven't been told that by engineering, but I just assume that that is the case. I don't know that that really will be the case, but it may be.
So how much parking have you allowed for or considered or written or thinking about putting into your design for each house?
I want 2 parking slots that are not in the garage, in addition to the garage on-site, off-street, as a minimum. And I think I can provide that within the design parameters that I'm giving you. I don't think I need to do more than that. I think it's more than adequate. And if they don't paint the cul-de-sac red, I'm sure there'll be the odd car or 2 out there occasionally, but I'm not sure what the requirement is.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions of the speaker? If not, thank you very much. We're going to close the public hearing.
If there are drainage questions, they could be answered by...
Thank you, Ray. Let me say again, my understanding was you two worked together. Am I wrong? Okay, and therefore you are both the applicant. Is that right? And you have 5 minutes, and then you have 3 minutes. We could split that up. We could have 5 of you, but that would not seem fair. So, tell you what, though, if there are questions of drainage, although I don't think drainage is before us this evening, we can ask you to come up and see if any of the commissioners have a question to ask of you.
I just heard like 8 or 9 people say drainage is a big concern.
Well, yeah, I'm asking if you'd like to go up to the podium, identify yourself and your address, and let's allow the commissioners to ask you some questions about that, and maybe we'll find out.
All right. I'm Clifford Bechtel of Clifford Bechtel & Associates, civil engineer, grading and drainage.
All right.
You have any questions on the...
Yes, Commissioner Bourgeois.
Sure, I'll ask a question.
Okay.
So my understanding way the conceptual drainage plan for the subdivision works is that there's a bioswale that's going to intercept surface flow, take it down to a drain, which is going to put it on the street. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And in your opinion, and maybe you could elaborate on this, the flooding issues that people are having underneath their homes, is that from surface runoff or is that from high groundwater? And what's the linkage between surface flow coming off of that property and onto adjacent properties that is now going to be intercepted versus just high groundwater in the whole site?
Well, based on my experience in looking at the site, since Leawood Court has retaining wall and assuming drainage behind that retaining wall, it's a hydraulic thing from the hillsides. I mean, springs that travel underground. Anyway, some of it's surface because it's an existing property that's undeveloped that basically starts at about 4 or 5 feet above their property and grades down the panorama court. So, I mean, it's not really answering your question, but it's a combination of both. And in the previous application with 4, the drainage issue came up. I think these houses and the design is going to ultimately have curtain drains to satisfy the neighbors and eventually a pump. We have the ability to pump to Union. It was in a previous design, but engineering had us take it out. But I'm sure that will enter back into the discussion as design moves forward on these houses, because the Union Street drainage is about 5 foot deep in those catch basins, and we can get some gravity flow from at least 3/4 of the lot to Union via gravity, and then the rest would be pumped if we need to provide pumps and satisfy the neighbors more hydraulically. And when I say hydraulically, it's because I think it's a groundwater issue also.
I was a little confused because you were saying to Union. I thought most of the water was like coming to Panorama.
Currently, yes.
Currently to Union or currently to Panorama?
Currently to Panorama is the way the design shows, but with the outcry of the neighbors, I assume there's going to be some additional design considerations for those neighbors.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions of this speaker? Commissioner Talasford.
I don't know if you can answer it, and maybe this isn't even a question I should ask, but I'm curious, in case there was a cellar element to any of the designs of these homes, would the drainage at all affect that? Or, I mean, can you still pump the water out, or?
Well, I'm not totally familiar on some of the development code for a house. That's more an architectural question, but yeah. I always think basements help because you're going to have a structure that creates a low point that has perforated drain tile and things around that basement. The water is naturally going to go to the lowest point. If I'm allowed to pump, some cities don't allow you to pump anymore. They make you make it like a swimming pool and don't allow water to intrude or be pumped.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the speaker? All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm going to close the public hearing and ask the commission if you have comments, questions, motion. And would somebody like to start? Let me say something, because we've been given this advice from council and I'm not saying this in a derogatory sense, but we found this out 5 minutes ago, just when you did. But I think I should restate it again. We've heard 2 or 3 different configurations of the cul-de-sac. And I think we would have looked at those and started, if we were going to go forward with this, decide which was the most reasonable. But as I understand our ability tonight, it's one thing or nothing. And the one thing is 42 feet, because otherwise we need an exception. And if we need an exception, it is not categorically exempt. And if it's not categorically exempt, it is not a complete application. And if it's not a complete application, it would go back for CEQA determination. And we've already heard the applicant say that would take 3 months, and that could possibly be true. And doesn't want to do that, which invites an up or down motion. So, but it is rather complex, so I would encourage the commission to ask questions or discuss this. Yes, Commissioner Bourgeois.
I'll make a few comments and leave it to the rest of the commission for a motion, but this seems to be a project that's going to have to be full of compromises on both sides. Developer wants 4, neighbors want 2. We've come in with 3. I think there's been some very good thought into the configuration of those 3 lots, with an effort to accommodate some of the neighbors' concerns. But one of the big concerns of the neighbors is that cul-de-sac and that sidewalk. And I think that is a concession and a compromise that the applicant was willing to make, and I think it would have been good for the neighborhood. And for those reasons, I can't see supporting the 42-foot right now. I think, again, coming back to compromise, we have to fulfill the CEQA requirements, and I tonight, without having plans in front of me as to what 42 would look like, I can't make that approval.
Commissioner Telesfor?
I would just follow on with saying that without seeing that in front of us, it would change all the frontages. It would, I can't even imagine what it would look like. I don't think we have enough information, and I think it's going to have to go back for more review. I mean, I don't know what else to say here, and as far as the sidewalk issue, that would provide the continuity for that neighborhood, and I do think that's a very important issue. I am a little dismayed at I almost think this is a geometry problem, and I don't think I'm not sure that I like the way that the 2 houses, one are behind each other. They're almost like a corridor lot. I mean, almost like a, what do you call those lots? Yeah, like a flag lot. And we would like to discourage those. And when I looked at the configuration of the neighborhood here, what I'm seeing really are, 2 houses on each lot. Those are garages behind there. So I'm not sure 3 houses is the way to go. I mean, I'm not made up. I don't know that this is the right. I don't know that the pie's been cut the way it should be in this. Like I said, it's maybe a geometry problem. So.
Thank you. Commissioner Sayak?
Well, I'm going to agree that definitely it can't be, I cannot approve it today as is, if we're moving forward with the 42-foot radius. I just can't approve something that's not before us with concrete plans. I would actually like to hear from the applicant whether they would like just a yes or no, mine being a no tonight, or would you like the 3-month continuance? And that's just my own personal preference. It's up to the chair whether he wants to open that. But the two choices before me is the 3-month continuance or a no, and those are what I'm contemplating at this moment.
Why don't we finish our comments and then we'll revisit that. Commissioner Erickson?
I would just echo what Commissioner Sayat just said.
Well, it does seem that we are placed in a very difficult position. It's also fairly clear to me that no matter what I thought, this is not going to go forward tonight. So the only real question is whether we essentially, and if we can, and I'll direct this question to council, one of the suggestions is that we continue it in essence because the application would be deemed not complete, because unfortunately, I suppose it should have been seen that if we were talking about an exception, the categorical exception could not be granted, and yet nothing is proceeded on that basis. So I don't know whether we can continue it, so I'll direct that question to you. And if we can, is that continuance enough to allow the CEQA considerations before it comes back to us?
Again, repeating my prior advice, I believe you can continue it to do whatever additional environmental review is required. If the commission is inclined to continue it, I would continue it without a date certain. We would just have to renotice the public hearing. The only other option is to set a date certain and then continue the matter if the environmental review is not complete. That will result in people coming back and forth until the matter is finally ready to go for the hearing. So again, my best recommendation is that you continue it without a date certain and we renotice.
All right. If it's the pleasure of the commission that I reopen for the limited purpose of essentially, because this is just an unfortunate circumstance as near as I can tell, finding out from the applicant whether they would rather us just deny, then you have an appeal right, or whether to move this thing along because we think it needs this to do the environmental work that has to be done. But as a courtesy to you, again, because of this last minute, I think it is the pleasure of the commission that I reopen for that one limited purpose. Do you want us essentially to deny or continue?
And if I may, before the speaker comes up through the chair, let me just point out that if you deny, you have to deny based on the findings required by the Subdivision Map Act. If you deny and the applicant chooses to appeal the denial, then the applicant is still in the same position because we still have a CEQA issue, we still have a subdivision design issue.
1 second, please. All right, so I'll give the applicant a moment. Are you ready to respond to that?
I didn't understand what the town attorney just said. Did he just say if we ask for denial or approval and you deny it and it goes to the council?
Let's get that on the record. Okay, as I understand what you just said was if we were to deny and he would appeal and it came before the council,
I would be giving the same advice I gave the commission. So in effect, all the time required to perfect and handle your appeal would most likely be wasted time.
That's what I thought. Makes the choice easier. Talk to each other and then tell me what your decision is. That's what we're 3 minutes.
No. Okay. Wait.
Go ahead.
Okay. I showed you a plan that had a 36, which is not applicable, a 42.
No, I've asked you one question. Do you want us to deny it tonight, or do you want us to continue it so we can deal with the CEQA question? I don't want to hear about
I'd like you to continue it to 2 weeks so that we can show you what a 42-foot turnaround would do. And I think that's reasonable, and if you approve 42, we'd like it approved. If you don't, then we'll have to go CEQA.
All right, thank you. I appreciate your comment. All right, the town attorney tells me that is a viable alternative. So one of the things, we can consider denying it, we can consider continuing it for CEQA, or we can consider continuing it for 2 weeks so that we would have before us what the 42-foot configuration would be. However, the only thing I'd be concerned about is I want the citizens to have a reasonable opportunity to look at the 42-foot consideration too, and I'm not sure 2 weeks. First place, I don't know how long it takes them to do that, and secondly, there has to be a reasonable time so the neighbors and other citizens can look at it so they can speak to it, because we're going to be having to reopen this to reconsider. So I guess before we deal with whether 2 weeks is reasonable, the concept is the question. Do you want to continue it so they have an opportunity to come back with 42 feet, or do you want to continue it so we've told them to do CEQA, or do you want to deny it?
Yeah, I would support continuing it. I'm not sure about the 2 weeks, because the other thing I'd like to check is the agenda. How's that?
Yeah, Ms. Davis, when she has a chance to look at the upcoming agenda requirements, can advise the commission about when the soonest opportunity would be to return the application.
Well, I have no doubt that 2 weeks is too short.
And so I would tend to, but I just wanted to check that out.
All right. I'd like to find out whether there's a differing view of continuing this to allow them to come in with some new drawings, but also enough time so that everybody can have an opportunity to look at it and be able to comment on it. That, to me, is probably more like a month. All right. Now,
I would agree with that.
So if anyone has a motion, any motion you want, I'd appreciate it if you'd make it and we can get a second.
Well, I would move to, may I?
Please
okay.
do.
Do we have an answer?
Commissioner Telesmore is going to make a motion.
Okay, do we have an answer?
If I may, Mr. Chair, according to staff, the soonest date that the matter could be returned to the commission would be March 25th.
Okay. All right, so that's about a month. All right, yes.
Quick question. Realistically, to get an initial study properly done, about how much time?
The consultant, I would expect, would take 3 to 4 weeks to prepare it, and we normally have a 2-week turnaround for an administrative draft. Then we have a 20-day public review period. It has to be in the paper 3 weeks out. I'd say 2 to 3 months is a pretty objective estimate. We would obviously try to do it as quickly as possible, but a lot of things come into play, and there's no guarantee on how long we can turn it around.
Let me also just say one thing. I don't think it's adequate that we simply say we're going to continue it for 1 month. That continuance 1 month would presuppose that the new drawings would come in adequately within that 1 month period so that it could be circulated. There's no use showing up if we get this 3 days before and the citizens haven't had a chance to look at it. So what I would encourage is that perhaps we say on the condition that the drawings be submitted in 1 week, then we continue it for until the 25th of March. So does anyone want to make such a motion?
And not make it so that it's a date not certain?
No, make it, it's up to you, but we were talking about.
And so if it came back sooner, I just wanted, we can discuss.
No, we have to pick a date, and we know it can't be sooner because that's the first available date.
Okay. Okay. Do I have any feeling? Okay, I'll just make the motion then. To continue, I make the motion to continue application S-08-30, M-08-13 to March 25th. And under the findings of that it can be continued for environmental, no, just for drawings. And what else are we continuing this for? The drawings and the revised drawings, okay.
Showing the
and public hearing, or being able to show it to the neighborhood, And did I forget something?
We want the drawings to show the 42-foot
Oh, thank you.
configuration.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
that the drawings would be submitted to staff
Right.
no later than 1 week from tonight, because applicant has indicated that's a reasonable time, and that it then be circulated as promptly as possible, or made available as promptly as possible, so that anyone can look at it and comment on it, and that the hearing on this matter then be set for March 25th.
Good motion, Tom. I'll second that
That's
motion.
I'll make the motion.
Yeah, and I'll second that motion.
Are there questions about that, comments? John Bourgeois looks troubled.
Yeah, I'm concerned. I'm just looking at the plans and trying to figure out what squeezing it is going to do. And I agree with Mr. Jeans that it's not the ideal situation. What we have before us in the 3-lot configuration is pretty well thought out. And I liked the 32-foot radius with the sidewalk for the neighborhood. And I'm just concerned that we're going to see something, we're not going to like it, and then you still have to go through the secret review, which would probably be the next step that this commission would take. And so I'm worried about, you're concerned about time, and we're talking 2 to 3 months, and now we're potentially adding a month on top of that. Again, this is all something that's just what's going through my head right now, and I'm weighing how I'm going to vote on this motion.
Mr. Chair, can I just, through the chair, point out that the applicant always has the option to request an additional continuance and to ask staff to initiate an additional CEQA review. So they always can second guess their own decision within that period of time.
Are there other comments? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion? Aye. Commissioner Stack, you voted yes. So that's 4 and 1 abstention. Commissioner Erickson. All right, so that is done.
And just for the record and for those in the audience, the commission has continued this public hearing to March 25th to give the applicant an opportunity to submit revised drawings showing a 42-foot right-of-way in conformance with the town code requirements. No further notice will be provided.
All right, the next public hearing is number 3, and that's for 16771 Frank Avenue. And I would ask Ms. Davis, who's certainly busy this evening, if she can give us a staff report.
Ms. Savage is supposed to be doing that, and evidently doesn't. Here she comes. There she is.
There's a tape delay.
Well, Ms. Savage is going to give us a report. Thank you. Could I ask the people leaving to leave?
Good evening, Commissioners. The property is located at 16771 Frank Avenue. The project originally consisted of the subdivision of one parcel into 2 lots.
Could you get a little closer to the mic, please?
Absolutely. The proposal originally consisted of the subdivision of one parcel into 2 lots, the demolition of the existing single-family dwelling, and the construction of 2 single-family residences at the property. And it was initially heard by the Commission on December 10th, 2008. Neighbors raised concerns regarding privacy and view impacts that may have resulted from the construction of the residence proposed on Lot 1. The application was continued to allow the applicant to redesign the residence in consideration of those concerns. The applicant submitted revised development plans with the following modifications. The second story was reduced by 606 square feet. The total floor area was reduced by 46 square feet. The height was reduced 3 feet. The second story was set back an additional 30 feet from the rear property line. And the second story was also set back an additional 35 feet from the residence located at 16570 Farley Road, which is at the rear of the subject property. The redesign requires the removal of one additional tree, which would conform to town code. The town's architectural consultant commented that the second story in the revised plans appears too small when compared to the size of the first story, which creates an odd appearance when viewed from the side. However, the consultant believed that the front and the rear elevations were excellent in design. The applicant has addressed neighbors' concerns, and the neighbors are pleased with the revised plans. Staff supports the revised elevations. This concludes staff's report, and staff is available for any questions.
All right, are there questions of Ms. Savage? There being no questions, we'd like to hear from the applicant. And this is your card then? You submitted a card?
I did not, no.
Oh, well, when you're through, would you submit a card, please?
Okay. Chris Spalding, architect, 801 Camilla Street, Berkeley. We were sent back from our last hearing to try to reduce or eliminate the second story, which we tried to eliminate it, but we couldn't get 4 bedrooms on the ground level, so we put as much downstairs as we could and made the second story as small as we could. And in doing so, working with the neighbors, trying to keep their view corridors and their privacy, we ended up with the taking more than half of the square footage of the second story away, and we took all of that off the back half of the house to get the view from the neighbor to our west, so his view wasn't blocked, and I think he's happy with it, and to keep the privacy of the neighbor to the rear, and I know that she's happy with it. And we didn't come any further forward with it to please the neighbor to the southeast. So I think we've got everybody around us happy, and so hopefully you are as well.
Are there questions of the speaker? Commissioner Bourgeois.
I would just like to make a comment first and then follow up with a question. Again, I know we gave you some complicated direction and you had a lot of constraints, and I appreciate you coming back with something that perhaps compromised some design issues, but I think made everybody happy. So the question on that is, given the consulting architect's concern about the awkwardness of, now you have such a reduced second story, from a design perspective, is there anything, how did you approach that from kind of an aesthetic standpoint? I know it was complicated, but it looks like you tried to make some design things to make it blend in a little better. If you could just kind of take me through that process. So,
well, yeah, since it's a small second story in relation to the bottom story, we set it in from all sides so that it's somewhat hidden in the roof as much as possible, and so that when you look at it from the street, which is where most people will view it from, it looks like a normal house. And the only place where it's going to look a slightly odd proportion would be from the neighbors that don't want to see it. So from their perspective, it's small, and that's what they want. So the general public's not going to see it from that direction.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a card from Gary Johnson.
My name is Gary Johnson. I live across Augustine at 16791 Frank Avenue, and my house fronts on Frank Avenue. In working with the architects and the group, I'm quite happy with the changes that they've made, and now that second story is right across the 50 feet away from us, and it's acceptable to us now. The thing that I would like to talk about is about the frontage on Frank Avenue. You've asked for sidewalks and curbs and gutters, and I personally don't want those on our frontage. I know we had a lot of talk about people on the street and sidewalks here in the last two discussions, but the fact of the matter is, this is sort of a country setting. You have all along our side of the street going back, there are no curbs and gutters. There are no sidewalks. You have a tendency on our street to stick a house in here and stick a house in there with some curbs and gutters and sidewalks, and then there's nothing on either side of them that matches up, and it looks stupid, to tell you the truth. And I know that over time maybe it'll all start matching up, but right now it doesn't. They also present some drainage problems. The people up before us talked about drainage. Across the street, you had someone do this, put in some curbs and sidewalks, kind of standing alone by himself, and it puddles up as deep as the curbs every winter when we have some rainstorms like we've had in the last few days. I would prefer these guys build a couple of houses on Placer Oaks, and they did put in some curbs, but they didn't put in sidewalks, and it fits a lot better. If you have to have the curbs, at least let's leave the sidewalks out of this. And I'm finished.
Any questions of the speaker? Thank you very much.
The trees. I forgot about the trees. Sorry. These are the two redwood trees that I believe are now going to be taken out. They are within the plan inside the house right now, and I just want you to know that those two trees are dying. It's a good idea to take them out in this plan. We actually were worried no longer than a few days ago that one of them was going to fall down and hit our house, and that's the way they're going to fall. That's the way the wind blows in that place. So my comment on this being the neighbor is I'm glad that these trees are coming out. They were going to have to come out anyway in the next couple of years. I've had about 6 of them on my lot that have had to come out in the last 10 years because they're getting eaten by beetles and they're dying.
Thank you for taking the time and coming down and talking to us.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Citizen Ray. Is there water left in there? Thank you. Could you put some gin in it? She said.
Yes, looking at the proposal this afternoon, it seems like the architect and the developers have met the neighborhood's concern, and as I remember, I spoke on it last time, neighborhood compatibility was a big issue. It looks like it's pretty well been taken care of. So my last comment is to the procedure, okay? Mr. Chairman, if I may, please, when you allow people to come up and introduce new evidence in the rebuttal period for developers, you preclude any comment to the contrary from we the people. And that is not what you're supposed to be doing, okay? And Ms. Rooney's, doggone it, Ms. Rooney's not here anymore. I would urge Ms. Rooney, even though she's absent, one of her first things that she does when she shows up here to as the brand new wonderful planning director, that she get rules and regulations in the seats here, so the people who come here once in their lives only can read what is appropriate and what is supposed to be done and what the constraints are, etc., etc. Every community that I've ever lived in has always had published rules and regulations in the chamber, okay, in the public hearing chamber. Los Gatos, not a clue. Not a clue. Bud Lortz and Company, okay? Bud Lortz. PUD, Planned Unit Development. Thank you. Hooray for Ms. Rooney. I'm just dying to see her take over here.
Does anybody have any questions of this gentleman? Okay, no questions.
No questions? Oh, phooey. about a smile?
Is there, the applicant want to say anything?
Yeah, just the owner has a question. He has a potential buyer for this lot that might want to make it a little smaller, like about 2,600 square feet and 1 story. And he would like to know if that buyer, it's tentative, if that buyer does come through and purchases this, would that have to come back through this body, or could staff and us just?
I will defer to counsel or to Ms. Savage.
And no, it would not have to come back to the Planning Commission.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, we're going to close the public hearing. And can we have discussion or a motion? Ms. Telesworth.
I had a question of staff. It was brought up by a speaker about the curbs and gutters and sidewalks and all of that. And when I was out at Frank Avenue, it is one of those developments that looks like it, could go to all sidewalk or not. So my question is that a code now? That
If I could refer to Public Works staff training.
Currently, our condition says that they have to pay the new fee for future development if there needs to be. So it's not a condition that they have to build it at this time, but they have to pay the fee first, just in case we need to do it in the future.
Okay. So then we could leave that up to them if they so chose?
That's right.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Can I have a motion? Commissioner Bourgeois?
As I stated previously, I appreciate the applicant's design changes, and seems like we came up with a win-win solution. So I'm going to make a motion to approve architecture and site application S-08-043 for single-family residence at 16771 Frank Avenue. And make the findings that this project is categorically exempt pursuant to Section 15303 of CEQA, and that I can make the required considerations as required in Section 2920-150 of the Town Code for granting an A&S application as set forth in Exhibit 4 in our staff report, and approve this A&S application with the conditions as outlined in Exhibit 15 of our staff report.
All right. Can we double check to make sure that 15 essentially allows that alternative of putting the money up as opposed to putting in the sidewalk?
Where would that?
Well, it should be attached as 15, I suppose.
15?
14.
Oh.
That's what it says. Okay.
Yeah, Exhibit 41, and it says the in lieu fee shall be paid. So basically the condition is that they will pay the fee and not put in the curb and gutter.
Okay, great.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. And I think Commissioner Erickson is abstaining.
Anyone dissatisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission may appeal the decision to the Town Council. An appeal must be filed within 10 days. It must be filed upstairs in the Clerk Department. There are fees for filing an appeal.
All right, we're at item 4, which is our first new matter this evening, which is 140 Creffield Heights. And I'd ask for a staff report, and I assume that's Ms. Savage.
Correct. I would like to point out that there is a desk item available if anyone is interested. The property is located at 140 Creffield Heights, west of San Benito Avenue and approximately 1,100 feet north of Los Gatos Saratoga Road. All of the surrounding properties contain single-family residences. The property is bordered by the city of Montecito at 3 property lines and is accessed by a right-of-way shared with 136 Creffield Heights. The existing residence straddles a property line of 2 parcels, both of which are owned by the same property owner, and the applicant is required to merge the parcels into one parcel. They have submitted the required application materials to begin the merger process. Staff recommends a condition be added to require the recordation of the lot merger prior to issuance of building permits to ensure the process is completed. And this condition is contained in your desk item. It was not included in the original set of recommended conditions of approval. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing garage, construct a 552 square foot garage, a 908 square feet amount of additions to the single family residence, and to construct a 709 square foot cellar. Although the project could be approved by the Director of Community Development through a minor residential development application, staff is referring the application to the Planning Commission because the project would create the second largest residence in the immediate neighborhood. The proposed project complies with the required setbacks, height limitations, and structure coverage limitations. The neighborhood is a mix of 1- and 2-story homes, and the applicant has designed the project to diminish potential mass and scale impacts to the neighborhood. Some grading is proposed in order to provide a lower height. Staff and the town's architectural consultant have determined that the proposed development is compatible with the immediate neighborhood in terms of mass and scale. However, apart from a 3,620 square foot residence, which is considered an anomaly and not considered for purposes of neighborhood analysis, the existing homes in the immediate neighborhood range in size from 2,146 square feet to 3,037 square feet. At 3,281 square feet, the proposal creates a significant departure from the existing neighborhood in terms of square footage and FAR. Staff is sensitive to balancing the owner's desire to add additional rooms while maintaining consistency with the town's residential design guidelines. Staff supports the request for additional floor area, but we do recommend that the addition be reduced so that it is compatible with the floor areas and FARs in the immediate neighborhood in relationship to the size of the lot. Staff has included a condition of approval to reduce the floor area. If the application is approved as recommended, staff will work with the applicant in analyzing the neighborhood data to determine the allowable floor area. The neighbors who have expressed an interest in this project will have an opportunity to review the revised plans prior to being approved by the director. At this time, the town has received 1 letter of concern and 3 letters of acceptance from neighbors. One of the letters of acceptance was not included in the staff report, but all 3 letters of acceptance are included in the desk item. The applicant submitted a letter in response to the neighbors' concerns. The concerns raised include soil stability, drainage problems, sewer issues, and private road access and damage. In response to the concerns, staff has the following comments. The conditions of approval require a soils report and shoring plans to be submitted with the building permit should the project warrant them. Conditions are required to reduce possible drainage impacts, and town staff does not anticipate any drainage problems associated with this project. A sanitary sewer lateral cleanout is required as a condition of approval to be installed at the subject property line. Condition number 29 requires the shared driveway to be kept open. If temporary closure should be needed, 48 hours notice is required to be provided to the neighbors. The staff report stated that condition number 35 requires the developer to repair roadways damaged by the developer's operation. Staff would like to clarify that this particular condition covers public roadways, not private driveways, which is how this property is accessed. There have been conditions used in the past that require pre- and post-construction surveys for roadways, so that if damage does occur as a result of the project operation, the developer would be responsible to repair any damage. Staff recommends these conditions be added with the following language. Pre-construction pavement survey. Prior to issuance of a building permit, the project applicant shall complete a pavement condition survey documenting the extent of the existing pavement defects using a 35mm or digital video camera. The survey shall extend the full length of the private driveway. The results shall be documented in a report and submitted to the town for review. The second condition is a post-construction pavement survey. The project applicant will complete a pavement condition survey to determine whether road damage occurred as a result of project construction. Rehabilitation improvements required to restore the pavement to pre-construction condition shall be proposed by the applicant. The results shall be documented in a report and submitted to the town for review and approval. The applicant shall be responsible for completing any required road repairs prior to release of the certificate of use and occupancy. And those conditions are recommended to be added to appease the concern of the neighbor regarding road damage that we're told occurred at the last construction project. And finally, in regards to the concerns, the development plans show the distance of the new construction to be about 94 feet from the neighbor's house that has concerns regarding privacy. This concludes staff presentation. Staff is available for any questions.
Questions of staff? Commissioner Bourgeois?
Thank you for the staff report, and I appreciate the proactive approach of giving us these options. The post-construction monitoring, everything, the wording you just proposed, would that be added to condition 35, or would those be additional conditions that we'd have to add?
Those would each be separate conditions.
Each be separate, okay.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. We'd like to hear from the applicant. I have received a card from the property owner. I have not received a card from Mr. Slaw. So Mr. Is it Papadopoulos?
Papadopoulos, that's right.
Okay, if you'd give us your address and your full name.
Sure. My name is Greg Papadopoulos. I'm the property owner, along with my wife, Lori Cantley, at 140 Cruffield Heights, the property in question. Let me just start with a little bit of sort of rationale about what we're doing, so you understand the current residence is, which we love. We love the neighborhood. We love our neighbors. Is effectively a two-bedroom home. So there are 2 bedrooms that we have there, along with a full-time office. The floor plan is a very open floor plan, but it also means that we essentially, the living room, family room, and dining room are all the same room. So what we wanted to do, we're going to our 5th year in the house, is essentially add a 3rd bedroom to the house and a family room. So that's the essence of the expansion of the project and what we're after. You know, one of the things on the outset was we really wanted to do this in the character of the house that's there. We love it, the feeling of the neighborhood, and I think, you know, the results and the analysis from the consulting architect is that we've met all those objectives. In fact, in so doing, we didn't change the roof line from did not exceed the existing height of the house there. Another thing that we tried to do was not change the footprint of the house. So even though there is this addition in livable square footage, in fact, it's only added about 100 square feet, or about 3%, to the actual floor, to the footprint of the home. So we've also paid attention in the process a lot to the impact on neighbors from a privacy point of view. You notice we don't have windows on a side that's facing the lopes. I think the concern that Ms. Anderson has is essentially it's a front-to-front facing, which is about 100 feet along the sight line, which we think is what a normal separation is across houses, front-to-front kind of view. So we think we've addressed all that. The one thing that certainly has given us pause in the conditions, all the conditions we think is fine, and we live there too, so we want the driveways to be in good repair and the like. But the FIR really doesn't make much sense to us in the request to reduce floor area. In that we think, and all the indications are, in fact, it is completely consistent. We haven't really changed the footprint of the project, and the mass and character of the house is the same. So we don't understand what the concern is. We don't see this as a numerical question. It's really an intent, and then the execution along that intent. If it was just a little bit that we're changing, then we'd ask, well, that feels arbitrary. I mean, we've complied against what's been written as the requirements here. If it's major, then it's effectively denying the project because it's 2 rooms that we're adding on, and we wouldn't really know how to reason through from there. So the request is that you, in fact, approve the project with all the stated conditions except for condition number 2. So as is, as designed. Thank you.
All right, other questions of the applicant? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I have some cards here. Veronica Jones.
Hi, I live at 115 Cruffield Heights. My house is approximately maybe 1,400 square feet. the house, the first house in to my right is probably 1,000 square feet. We've had a lot of building going on up there in the last several years, remodeling. We've lived with jackhammering. You can't even go in your patio. Dirt, trucks, rocks in the street. It's been horrific. Nothing to do with him, of course, but we recently had a house right across from me built that more or less looks like a hotel. No one comes to my house and says, is that a hotel? It looks like it takes a whole lot. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of the front of it, but this is the back. It's directly across from me. And it is massive. And when you leave Crefeld Heights, if there's a cement truck pouring cement, maybe you're going to the dentist or something, and you don't want to be inconsiderate, so maybe you wait a half hour. I've walked up to my house a lot. I just feel that we've just had so much going on, and I feel the size of this house is probably a little bit large. It doesn't impact on my house directly, like the view. He's not looking into my house, but we would ask for a lot of consideration from the builder, and I'm sure he would intend to give it. But it still seems like a rather large house for the area. Thanks.
Ms. Jones, could we see if there are any questions? Are there any questions? Yes, Commissioner Talaswar has a question.
Would you tell me, you live, where is your house?
If you came into Crefeld Heights, I'm the second house on the right.
Going up the street
Right.
or whatever that
And the house below me is even smaller than mine.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just for the record, too, how many have visited the area? I think all of us have. Okay. All right, the next card I have is Patricia Anderson.
I don't know how this works, but I'd like to put some pictures up just to refresh your memory. How does that face up? Face up. So they just sit here and oh yeah. These were taken.
Excuse me,
okay.
when you
Patricia,
start, yeah, just give us your name and your address.
My name is Patricia Anderson. I live at 136 Crefeld Heights, and I've lived there for 15 years. Purchased my house from the last Crefeld, Dorothy Crefeld. Anyway, I have tried to keep my house in the same manner that it was when I bought it because I liked what I bought and it fit me perfectly. It just needed upgrades and enhancement, which I have done little by little as I could afford to. I also like my neighbor very much. I'm delighted to have him. I think he and his wife are great people. I understand their wishes to enlarge their home, even though they had bought it when it was a fairly new home. It had been taken down to studs by the previous owner, so I'd spent a year and a half not being able to get out of my driveway, and I did have drainage issues, and I did have sewer issues, and things that nobody thought would be a problem, and that's why I was extremely concerned about that. I also have some issue with 94 feet. I'd like to remind you again by looking.
Excuse me, why don't you take the microphone out? You can hold it.
Okay. How does this come out?
Just pull right out. There you go.
All right. This is my house, and you look down into my house, and why I bought that house is because it had windows that I could look out of. If there's construction there, I will need to have all the drapes closed. If people are working there, I will have no privacy for another year and a half. And again, it's so difficult to get in and out. That the only two people on that road are myself and my neighbor. And I have talked with my neighbor about this, and I'm sorry to go against his wishes, but I just am freaking out about it. This again shows it doesn't seem like that much square footage, and I have not had it measured myself, and I don't know where they measure. But when you look out of my house, you see their house, and as I said, these pictures were taken, a lot of them, from my window. And if you notice on this bottom one, you can see right straight through my house, and that's with every single window. So I always liked the fact that I had some privacy, because when I'm in my home in this bottom room and looking out, I don't have to worry about somebody looking in. And maybe that's selfish, but that was what I'd purchased, as the house was what he purchased, with the same number of people living in it. And I just am concerned about the mass of the house looking down on me.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Yes, Commissioner Talascore wants to ask you a question.
Yes, so you're concerned about the privacy, your privacy.
Very concerned.
So is there something you're thinking that, what would,
What's interesting, because
I mean, do you have an idea of what?
On the other side, there are no windows looking
You know
down.
what, I can't hear you, you're just speaking there.
There are neighbors, the Lopes, who did not contest it, who are also the closest people to it, aren't having any windows looking out at them, but I'll have a whole second story from what I could see
understand, but I'm
looking down at
asking you,
me.
if you were going to mitigate this, is there something you would suggest?
I'm just, I'm not very good at reading plans, because I have never complained about anything, and the house next to me I thought was a remodel, and it would be fine, and it turned into this monster that has filled every inch of the ground.
But you were talking about, let me try to do this one more
And so
time.
I'm afraid that if I'm looking at plans, I don't know what I'm looking at.
But
And I'm
from your
afraid it'll be bigger than what I think.
From your perspective, you have windows that look out.
On my patio.
Right. So, and then you're saying that.
And I look from my window out
Wait
at a
minute.
garage.
Okay, let me get this right. But the people above you, even though they're 94 feet away, will be able to see into your windows.
And
Is there
through my
another?
house.
Let's do this. If you let her finish her
I'm
question,
sorry.
then she'll let you finish your answer.
I'm just very upset right now.
Okay, we understand. So what I'm trying to get from you is about privacy, and to work on a compromise. So what would there be anything that you could think of that could help your privacy and also give your neighbor the opportunity to, build his house?
Well, part of my privacy issue is also just the process of the building. It will be another year and a half that I have people watching every move I make, and in the driveway again, and maybe we're just freaking out because we've had 5 of them all around us, and I've gone through this twice.
Thank you.
Any other questions of this speaker? Thank you very much. All right, I have John Lochner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is John Lochner. I live at 150 Creffield Heights. Creffield Heights is approximately 3.5 acres of land, I believe, and there are 10 homes that are serviced by the one entrance to Creffield Heights. My property is at 150 and is the original Creffield home that was built in 1902. I moved there in 1961. And so I've been there for 48 years. And every home in Creffield Heights has been remodeled at least once, many of them 2 or 3 times, including my own. So we've seen a lot of construction traffic in Creffield Heights, and we've all put up with it over the years. So it's nothing new. We hope it will end soon. My property adjoins the Papadopoulos property, and my garage backs up to their house, so there's no visual effect on our property or my view from their house. So we are not in opposition to that, and would hope that you would approve their project.
Thank you. Let's see if there are any questions.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you, Mr. Lochner.
You're welcome.
All right, I think we now have the applicant and apparently joined by his architect. So, gentlemen, would one or both of you like to conclude?
Good evening. I'm Gary Schlow, architect on the project, and Commissioner Talasford, maybe I can better state the privacy issues as I see them, if you want me to. If you don't, I'm just here for your service.
That would be wonderful.
Ms. Anderson, I understand she has a concern for privacy. That whole hillside enjoys one view, and that view is to the east. From her house, she has a wonderful view to the east, and if she turns around, she looks at the Papadopoulos house, which is not a view, an interesting view. Of course, Papadopoulos have their window in the view shed to the east as well. So I don't think anyone would ask a neighbor to eliminate a view window from their house as long as it didn't affect their view window. So it's like a domino effect. Everybody wants to see the view to the east. So I did meet with Ms. Anderson a couple months ago, and I suggested that that we plant a Pittosporum forest along the upper side of her property. She had some photographs there that showed a planter and a concrete wall and then the driveway. To mitigate a number of things, and I would certainly do it if I lived there. Number one, the west exposure to her house is extremely hot in the summer. Well, that's one reason to plant trees. Another reason is to give her privacy. But she didn't want any of that. So I just want to let you know that we tried to resolve that one issue. And also that 94 to 100 feet from the balcony window of the Papadopoulos to Miss Anderson's windows. It's basically the same as all streets and right-of-ways in the town of Los Gatos. When you look at from the front window of one side of the street to the front window of the across the street neighbor is about 94 feet. So you know, no one really has privacy, one front window to another front window. And that's the analogy I put up on one of my drawings to show that we're 94 feet, and that's basically what everybody is in Los Gatos.
Do you have a question, Commissioner?
A follow-up, Mr. Schlow, thank you very much. So two things. One, would you be willing to revisit if the neighbor, Mrs. Anderson, would want you to think about a trellis or additional shrubbery? I mean, would you revisit that with her?
Certainly,
Okay.
yeah.
My second question is, there is a deck off of the garage. Is that right? Is that what I'm seeing here?
A balcony?
Balcony.
Yes. It sets back of the garage, but it's
there.
Yes.
How tall is that? What's the height of it?
It's an 8-foot ceiling. It's tucked back into a pocket, and it has a roof and a ceiling over it.
Okay.
And
Well, I was just wondering, with the speaking of the privacy, is just when you elevate something, I mean, it definitely, you could see right into those windows. But
absolutely.
That's sort of, that was there.
Yes.
So what we're trying to do is figure out a way that we can make someone not feel like they're being looked at or whatever that is. So I'm just thinking maybe we need to tease that out a bit more. In some way,
I wish that the Papadopoulos had real estate in which to plant some shrubbery to the east, because that's the first thing they would do, because their privacy too. You might turn the whole argument around. Their privacy, well, it works both ways.
It does work both ways, which is why we're here trying to work this out with
Appreciate
you.
that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner Bourgeois.
Good evening, Mr. Schlow. Mr. Papadopoulos, when he was up here doing the introductory statements, expressed a concern for the condition of approval that's currently being proposed by staff to go back and work with them to reduce the FAR, the floor area ratio. Sounded like there was some flexibility, but not a lot. And so I wanted to get an idea from you how much flexibility you felt there was in the design to reduce that. None at all, 5%, 10%, or if that condition is kind of a deal killer.
There's so little area. It's like Mr. Papadopoulos says. There's 2 rooms up there. If we take half of one of those rooms away, it's not going to affect privacy to Ms. Anderson. It's not going to affect mass. It's going to affect Papadopoulos because they lose 1 room. You don't live in half a room. So, and the fact being that we're abiding according to the floor area ratio formula, realizing it's a guideline. We know that, but I've had a lot of experience with these floor area ratios, and numbers of times I've gone over floor area ratios, and the comments from Larry Cannon, from neighbors, everybody, gosh, it's really a great house. Well, and then I come to you, and I get over the floor area ratio approved. Now, I don't expect a precedence to be set here, but when we design a house, we certainly make that floor area ratio an absolute maximum, unless we're dealing with houses that need more space. But in this case, we haven't gone over the floor area ratio, and all the other things that have been said about this house, if I went down, I had a negative column and a positive column. Everything's positive about this house. So my answer is long-winded, but I don't see how we can cut off 100 square feet or 300 square feet or even 50 square feet. That's difficult, and I feel that we shouldn't have to do that.
And if I could follow up, thank you for that answer. Your opinion is that even if you did, it would not change the external bulk and mass of the structure?
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to close the public hearing, and we can have a discussion or make a motion. So does anyone have either discussion or a motion? Yes, Charles? I'm sorry, Mr.
Whichever. It's fine. This is a question for the staff, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
So when you, Ms. Savage, recommended the possibility of reducing the amount of square footage in the house, did you have an idea about how that might be done to maintain the integrity of the design and what they were trying to accomplish with adding the square footage?
We did not take a look at aesthetically how it would be reduced. What we would do in the future when they came in is look at the existing floor areas and also the, in terms of floor area ratio and square footage, compare those in terms of the immediate neighborhood and ask them to redesign the project aesthetically.
I'd like to comment on that, too. As near as I can tell, the suggestion made by staff, and maybe I'm wrong, and you can comment, arises solely from, for example, the comparison we have on page 4 of our report, where all of the square footage of the existing addresses are set forth. And there's no question that 140 Creffield will be certainly the second, I guess, largest home there. And normally we want to be careful that we don't have creeping increases in size. On the other hand, from what I understand of the facts in this case, the internal growth is not going to affect the external building. And I personally think that as long as we don't change the externals of a building to be bigger, in essence, then this kind of comparison is no longer as important. In fact, probably isn't important. But maybe I'm missing something on that. But I would hate to take away square footage simply to take away square footage. And if, in fact, this does not affect the exterior of the building, then it would merely, to me, would be merely punitive without any benefit. So maybe I'm missing something there. Is there something besides comparing the externals of, or the total square footage, rather, of each of these buildings?
You're on the correct path. We chose the conservative approach And at this point, it is a numbers issue.
All right, thank you. Other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Sayar?
Actually, I just wanted to comment that I do appreciate the staff taking the conservative approach, because if the situation were reversed, I know oftentimes we would often say that, well, hey, we wanted to take a look at this. So I do want to appreciate that. But I just want to concur with the comments that I've heard thus far that the exterior is not going to change. And so I'd like to I'd like to remove that condition of approval and allow the applicant to keep the square footage as proposed. I guess this is turning into a motion, so if no one is,
That was my good.
Okay, let's just do this. Okay, I make a motion to, well, first I'm going to find that the proposed project is categorically exempt pursuant to Section 15301 of CEQA as contained in Exhibit 2. I'll also make the required considerations as in Section 2920-150 of the Town Code for granting approval of an Arc and Site application, also in Exhibit 2. Approve the architecture and site application S08086 with conditions contained in Exhibit 3. However, I would like to modify Exhibit 3 to remove condition number 2, the floor area reduction, and to include the 2 conditions that Ms. Savage stated for us on record about the pre- and post-construction survey that would follow condition number 35.
I'll second that. But I would like to add that there's one more addition. The lot merger condition in the desk item needs to be added to the motion.
Thank you for that. I forgot about that.
So we have a motion, including that, you accepted that?
Yes, please,
And
yes.
the seconder accepts, so, okay, obviously. All right, any discussion? All those,
My only discussion point is that if Ms. Anderson still has these privacy issues that she thinks about, what I had said previously and talked with Mr. Schlow about, and perhaps proceed in that direction. And that's just a comment, that I support what everyone's said so far.
all right, all those in favor? Aye. So there are 5 votes in favor of the full commission here this evening. All right, that concludes the,
Appeal rights.
go ahead.
Anyone dissatisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission may appeal the decision to the Town Council. An appeal must be filed within 10 days. It must be filed upstairs in the Clerk Department. There are fees for filing an appeal.
All right, we have no continued other business, so the next matter on our agenda is the election of the chair and the vice chair for 2009. Commissioner Bourgeois.
I move to nominate, acting chair, Tom O'Donnell, for chair of the Planning Commission.
Second.
Are there other nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
So I'm happy to say it's unanimous. I voted for myself. Grammar school, you weren't allowed to do that. All right, can we have a nomination for the vice chair? Commissioner Talasford.
I would like to nominate John Bourgeois, our vice chair of the Planning Commission for, a commissioner for the vice chair position.
I'd like to second that. Any other nominations? All those in favor? Aye, it is unanimous. Okay, do we have a report essentially from the director through the staff?
No, we don't have anything to report this evening.
Okay, are there commission matters? Does anybody have something they'd like to tell us? That being the case, we're going to adjourn at a reasonable hour. Thank you. The meeting's adjourned.